686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Olivia Utley. And David Lammy says he will scrap thousands of jury trials as he claims keeping tradition will lead to collapse.
If you are raped in our country tonight, that you might be waiting until 2028, 2029 for a hearing.
Well, the Justice Secretary says jury trials will be reserved only for those accused of the most serious crimes, as he sets out his measures to tackle the court backlog.
And another jail fail for David Lammy, as it's revealed 12 further prisoners have been accidentally released in the past 3 weeks, with a manhunt still on for 2 of them.
Elsewhere, one of Donald Trump's top team has revealed plans for a full travel ban on countries that are sending killers, leeches and entitlement junkies, his words, to the United States. Should we do the same in the UK?
And shocking new figures show nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow doesn't speak English as a first language. Stay tuned for more details.
Elsewhere, a shelter charity has been caring for and rehoming abandoned animals for 30 years, but now they're being forced to move due to a housing development.
Well, a rescue centre in need of rescuing. This animal charity that houses around 30 dogs is at risk of closure.
I don't know whether to feel a little bit sorry for David Lammy.
I mean, it has been a shocking few weeks for him, hasn't it? These prisoners keep escaping. It keeps going right to the top of all the news stories. The front pages are headlines. He can't seem to get a grip on it. At the same time, he's desperately trying to tackle this huge backlog in the courts, talking about scrapping jury service, something very, very, very unpopular. GB News viewers hate the idea of that. It's a very tough old brief, isn't it?
There was a brilliant comparison that was raised by Robert Jenrick today, who, of course, is the Shadow Justice Secretary. And now, he was saying, look at the case of Lucy Connolly, who wrote an intemperate tweet amid the Southport disturbances. There was another man who did a similar thing, and there was a prosecution. Well, he didn't accept the prosecution. He didn't plead guilty, and he demanded a jury trial. And the jury said he shouldn't go to prison. Now, with Lucy Connolly, because it was a judge, well, she was sent off to prison for an extraordinary amount of time. I wonder, had she said, no, I demand a jury trial and a fair hearing, that actually 12 Brits, good and true, would say, oh, come on, we're not going to send her to prison for 2 years for that.
Well, exactly, and that's a really, really important issue because statistics show that magistrates are far more likely to convict. Magistrates and judges on their own are more likely to convict than juries. So you could end up in a situation where you manage to do something to tackle the backlog in the courts, but our overcrowded prisons become even more overcrowded. So you could be fixing one problem, but creating another at the same time with a higher rate of convictions.
I mean, that is a real serious problem because it seems like it's almost whack-a-mole with this government. You know, they try and whack one problem and accidentally create another mole popping up from the ground elsewhere. Well, what do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say is the way, as ever, to get involved.
Or you can scan the QR codes on your screens. But for now, here's your latest news headlines.
Tom, Olivia, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. Just after midday, well, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, is expected to unveil major changes to tackle court backlogs, including a significant reduction in the number of jury trials. For either-way offences, defendants will no longer be able to opt for a jury if magistrates say they can hear the case. An appeal will now require approval from a judge before reaching the Crown Court. Magistrate sentencing powers, meanwhile, will rise from 12 to 18 months with the option of going up to 24. And a new jury-free division of the Crown Court will hear cases carrying sentences of up to 3 years, overseen by just a single judge. But juries will still be for more serious offences, typically those likely to receive 5 years or more. Well, David Lammy has said that axing jury trials will help victims.
Everything I'm announcing today is about centring victims in our criminal justice system. It is unacceptable that if you are raped in our country tonight, that you might be waiting until 2028, 2029 for a hearing. And I'm determined to do something about it.
But the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch spoke to us earlier saying that she thinks the plans are just another gimmick from a party not ready for government.
It is not the answer. The answer is to just get a grip. They don't know how to do anything. Everything that this government touches is a shambles, whether it's borders, whether it's prisons, whether it's taxes. They're U-turning all over the place. On the grooming gangs national inquiry, they've U-turned. Now they can't find someone to do it. On winter fuel payments, they said they were going to take it away. Then they decided to give it back. They are all over the place. This is just another example. We have a bunch of people who are not ready for government.
And that comes as the Justice Secretary's also revealed today a dozen prisoners have been mistakenly released in just the past month. 2 are still on the run. David Lammy says the pair are at large but not violent or sexual offenders and won't give any further details while police are preparing arrests. It comes after a series of blunders across the prison estate, including the wrongful release of a convicted sex offender, Brahim Kadur Sharif, and the case of Hadush Kabatu, whose mistaken release sparked protests in Essex. Mr Lammy says stronger security checks are now in place, but admits in his words, there's still a mountain to climb. A stark warning today from the OECD, which says that tax rises and spending cuts will drag on the UK economy for the next 2 years, slowing growth and keeping inflation among the highest in the G7. The report says fiscal tightening is acting as a headwind, with household incomes squeezed and consumption weakening. Growth is now expected to fall to 1.2% next year and inflation to stay stubbornly high through 2026. It comes as pressures mounting on the Chancellor Rachel Reeves after last week's £26 billion budget, though she insists her choices will help bring prices down and stabilise the economy. A British man has been detained in Ukraine on suspicion of spying for Russia, according to Ukraine's security service. Investigators say the suspect, a former member of the UK's armed forces who travelled to Ukraine last year to train soldiers, was later recruited by Russia's FSB, allegedly tempted by easy money. He's accused of passing Ukrainian military coordinates to Moscow and even preparing terrorist attacks, including receiving instructions to build an IED. He was arrested in October and is now being held on suspicion of passing unauthorised information to Russia. Here, new immigration laws set to receive royal assent this week will hand immigration enforcement officers unprecedented powers to target people smuggling gangs. For the first time, officers will be able to order illegal migrants to remove coats, jackets or gloves at UK ports to search for phones, and even inspect inside someone's mouth for hidden SIM cards or micro devices. The Home Office says the aim is to seize crucial early-stage intelligence, including messages between smugglers and migrants, to help disrupt the criminal networks driving the crossings across the Channel. And in sport, former England batter Robin Smith has sadly died today at the age of 62. Nicknamed, of course, Judge Smith, he was once one of the most admired players of his era, scoring more than 4,200 test runs across 62 matches, including 9 centuries. He also played 71 one-day internationals and spent his entire county career at Hampshire, where he became a club great. Across more than 2 decades in the game, he amassed over 26,000 first-class runs, leaving a lasting legacy in English cricket. Those are your midday headlines. Next, though, let's take a look at the midday markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
9 minutes past 12, here are the markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3198 and €1.1371. The price of gold is £3,172.72 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,722 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past midday. Now, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, will lay out plans in just a few minutes' time to curb the right for a jury trial, all part of his efforts to tackle the court's emergency, his words, and reduce the backlog.
However, these proposals are demonstrating a change of heart for the Justice Secretary, who just 5 years ago tweeted, "Jury trials are a fundamental part of our democratic settlement. Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea." Couldn't be much clearer than that, really, could it?
Well, all of this comes as the Justice Secretary admitting that 12 prisoners have been accidentally released in the past 3 weeks. It's going to be a busy day for David Lammy, as he's expected to speak in the Commons shortly. We'll, of course, bring that to you as soon as he gets on his feet, outlining the plans in full.
So, is restricting jury trials the right decision? We're joined by Special Investigations Editor at the Daily Mail, Sue Reid, and writer and commentator Kevin Marr. Kevin, I'm going to start with you, and I think that you are sympathetic to David Lammy's position. The other argument is that the right to a trial by jury is enshrined in the Magna Carta of 1215. It is a fundamental human right to be tried by a jury of your peers. And as Tom said, quite often a jury will let off people who shouldn't be convicted, someone like Lucy Connolly. How can you defend what David Lammy's saying?
Well, I'm very sympathetic to the plight that the Justice Secretary faces, which is just a crippling backlog in the Crown Court. The figures there this morning are absolutely startling. 80,000 cases rising to as many as 100,000 cases projected by 2028. The system is buckling, the system is not working. And I think David Lammy is grabbing the bull by the horns and saying that this position simply is not tenable, and it's not fair, and it's not reasonable, and something has to be done about it. And, you know, the tweet he made a few years ago, I suspect reveals his personal view, which is I wish I wasn't where I am, but I am where I am, and something has to happen to speed up and improve access to justice. Justice delayed is justice denied, of course. Now, that's a kind of hoary old claim, but I mean, it does bear out. I mean, if we are leaving people, victims of crime, serious crimes, years and years in abeyance before they get justice, that's not on, that's not reasonable. Something has to happen. He's inherited a shambles from the last government. I think that's fair enough to say, but he's trying to be proactive, to take action that will actually alleviate this problem and get us back on a firmer footing.
I mean, Sue, Kevin's got a point there, hasn't he? The system is creaking fit to croak. 78,000 cases in the backlog so far, set to be 100,000 by 2030. It is no good for victims of crime to have their cases hanging around for years with witnesses forgetting key details, etc. He did have to do something, didn't he? Maybe this was the least bad option.
Well, actually, I think it's the worst option. But what we need to be asking is, why are there so many cases? I mean, why has we got this backlog? I mean, I know we can't go backwards, but the fact is that crime is obviously rising, because otherwise there wouldn't be more criminal or alleged criminals coming to our courts. Perhaps we could deal with that before we, dismantle this very important element of freedom of speech. You know, people still have some trust in the jury system, and there are precious few institutions in this country that we do have any trust in now.
Mm. Is there an issue, though, with the jury system in multi-ethnic societies, to put it plainly? Lee Kuan Yew was a guy who led Singapore, basically created the country of Singapore. He decided to do away with the Anglo-American tradition of juries because Singapore had 3 large ethnic groups. In his experience, juries would go with their own groupings. You know, they would be more likely to let off people of their own background. He was pretty adamant that in multi-ethnic societies, perhaps it was a less good system than in ethnically homogenous societies. There's some argument that there is in-group preference with juries. No one would want an all-one-colour jury, for instance. There's a big controversy in the United States. Does the tradition break down slightly? Is that a risk?
Well, I do think the juries have changed, inevitably. I mean, we haven't educated our working classes for 30 years. So obviously they've changed. And that is a problem. And I do think there are tribal customs will come into play where people will support their own communities. I mean, I do think those are problems, but Lammy hasn't addressed those problems, has he? He hasn't said that's what the problems are. How can we sort that out and get the juries fair again? Has he? So now we're going to dismantle something that is still trusted, and believe me, it is still trusted at the moment, because people don't trust the single judge system, you know.
Kevin, what do you say to that? Is this a case of David Lammy basically throwing out the baby with the bathwater?
Precisely.
I think there's an important distinction. I think what he's saying is that the case is, if you like, at the lower end, the less serious cases that perhaps goes correct. Now, all cases are, of course, serious if you're the victim, but perhaps the less serious cases will be judged by a judge alone. But the very more serious cases, murder, sexual violence, would still face jury trial, and I think that's a useful distinction, to say that actually he's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What he's doing is to try and say, look, there is a long lag of cases that if we can just crack through, you know, this very long backlog and fix it, perhaps he then relents further down the line, or a Justice Secretary in a few years' time relents and says, actually, things are now in balance again. We can go back to full jury trials. Now, I mean, the other important aspect of what I think he's going to tell MPs today is a £500 million investment in the court system, and also into supporting victims, because I think this is an absolutely crucial element, that the longer a case is left, you know, that witnesses, the evidential the evidential prowess, if I can put it like that, of victim statements and eyewitness accounts and all the rest of it clearly diminishes over time. And of course, people, sadly die as well. So there's a need to kind of support the victim. And David Lammy's rhetoric today is all about being victim-centric. And this aspect of juryless trials is just one aspect of what is a much wider package. And I think a lot of people will welcome other aspects of the package. This is clearly a niggle. People are not wrong to say there is an important principle at stake. There is, and this has got to be done very carefully, very cautiously, and I think with a view to having a sunset clause perhaps somewhere down the line that says, actually, once we've got this mountain of cases dealt with, perhaps we can go back to the system as it was.
It does just really stick in the neck when this is something that has existed in one form or another for 1,000 years in this country, that we've celebrated in this country. Of course, other countries don't have the same jury system that sort of the English-speaking countries do, but we often think that's what sort of sets us apart, that sort of helped propel the English-speaking countries to the premier position that they've held in the world for the last 250 years. I mean, ultimately, Sue, I mean, is there something more than the practicality here? I don't want to sound sentimental, but are we sort of losing something of ourselves?
There has to be more than a practicality, because only 1%, an astonishing figure, I nearly fell off my chair when I read it, 1% are heard by jury now. Only 1% of all cases are heard by jury. I mean, how did that creep up on us?
I mean, that is pretty astonishing. So it's already a really, really small percentage. It's going to be shrunk.
About 1%. How is it going to cure the problem?
Well, exactly. And then don't you think, Kevin, that there is an issue, we were talking about this at the start of the show, with magistrates actually convict far more than juries do. And Tom was talking about two people tried of a very, very similar case, one by a jury, one in a magistrate's court. One in the magistrate's court got convicted for 2 years. The other one walked free. Could you see a situation where you managed to do something to begin to address the backlog in the courts, but you add to the backlog in the prisons? We know that the prison system is creaking as well, and you could see more convictions causing that problem.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the point that Sue raised a few minutes ago is really important to look at. We're dealing with the practicalities, and that's what David Lammy's trying to deal with today. But when we sort of roll back a little bit and sort of say, how did we get here? Why have we got why have we got this big structural problem? And is it in relation to changing nature of our population? And I suppose the prison system, the whole of the judicial system is in essence still a public service, and it's been underfunded for a very long time, and has clearly not kept pace with growing demand, if I can put it like that. That we've got a higher structural level of criminal cases, but the system just isn't big enough, fast enough, efficient enough, geared up enough to be able to deal with that in an expeditious way. And I think that's the nub of the problem. And this is why what David Lammy is going to say today is here is a big investment, a very big investment in the system. And I have to curtail some of the practices of the system to get that number down, simply because we're heading for, as he puts it himself, the brink of collapse. And government ministers don't often say that and speak in that kind of language about the systems that they oversee. So I think it's pretty heartfelt from David Lammy. And the tweet a few minutes ago, where a few years ago he's talking very passionately about jury trials. I suspect privately that's still his view. I suspect privately he still holds to that and does this very, very reluctantly today. And as I say, I think a few years down the line, it may be that a future Justice Secretary takes us back to a previous position.
Well, let's hope so, I suppose. Oh, yeah, sorry, Steve.
Very rare for anyone for any government to roll back on anything. It's very, very rare.
It's a good point, Sue. I remember, well, I don't remember, but I've read, income tax was introduced by Pitt the Younger as a temporary measure to deal with the Napoleonic Wars. And last time I checked, we do still have income tax on the statute books. Every year they have to reaffirm it because it's still technically legally a temporary measure. So every budget does actually have to reassert.
How extraordinary, I had no idea. Well, thank you very much, Sue Reed and Kevin Marr, for that very interesting debate on jury service. Well, friends of GB News, you can vote in today's You Decide poll by scanning the QR code now, and we're asking, do you have confidence in our justice system?
I have to say, I visited Runnymede a few weeks ago, where the Magna Carta was sealed. It wasn't signed because King John was illiterate, so he stamped it with his seal. And there's a brilliant Kipling poem about about all of the rights that were provided to this country through that. And it goes, at Runnymede, your rights were won at Runnymede. No freeman shall be tied or bound or dispossessed of freehold ground except by lawful judgment found and judged upon him by his peers. Forget not, after all these years, the rights were won at Runnymede.
Oh, who knew you were such an ass?
It's an important note of our history, I think.
Well, time for a brand new Great British giveaway now, and your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours in the new year. It's like having an extra £7,000 extra in your bank account each month for the whole of 2026. You really could be our biggest cash winner. Here's all the details you need.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Now, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come.
Yes, drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe. Stay tuned for more on that story.
But after the break, one of Donald Trump's top team has revealed plans for a full travel ban on countries that are sending killers, leeches and entitlement junkies to the United States. Should we do the same in the UK?
All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
There's a lot of tables out there that won't just have turkey on it. There'll be turkey and ham, and but I know some people that will cook 3 or 4 different meats. And obviously the joy of having turkey is that you can then make a turkey curry for Boxing Day and the subsequent days. So, you know, you should be having days of curry after your turkey lunch. I think for the masses, it's still hugely popular. You know, through the festive period at the Dog, we will have hundreds of people having Christmas parties, and most of them will order our turkey lunch or dinner. And then Christmas Day, we could sell it probably 3 or 4 times. The demand for people to go out for the traditional turkey roast is still massive. But hey, look, if you don't like a roast lunch, then why force yourself to have it on the, you know, probably one of the most important meals of the day in terms of bringing family together.
What about Sophie's point, Mark, about cost and spending £30–40 on turkey? That is simply too expensive for lots of people.
Yeah, I'll never be able to defend or debate that. You know, I know more than anyone the challenges around food inflation, and a good turkey has become a huge cost. But I still think where people can afford the tradition, the joy of coming together, sharing a big turkey roast meal it's a brilliant Christmas tradition. But yeah, the food inflation, that's something we've talked about a number of times, isn't it? You know, it's crippling our business and it's crippling people at homes. I suppose the key thing to look at is if you know what you're doing with it, the turkey, a good turkey will feed the family for many days. It's not just one meal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Donald Trump's Homeland Security Secretary has proposed new strict travel bans to be introduced, calling for there to be a full ban on countries that are sending killers, leeches and entitlement junkies to the US.
Well, these proposals come as 2 members of the National Guard were, of course, shot in Washington, D.C. last week.
Following the attack, President Donald Trump vowed to halt all immigration from Afghanistan and permanently pause migration from all third world countries.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is the former Director General of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Tony, it's a pretty stark measure from Donald Trump. I suppose the question is it practicable?
Well, hi, Tom. Yeah, I mean, it is in that, you know, for legal migration anyway. I mean, he controls who gets a visa or an ESTA to go to America. You need that before you can board a plane to get there. So generally speaking, it is feasible to stop people going to the US. The problem he's got, same as us, Tom, is, you know, illegal migration. It is still possible to get into the States by one means or another, usually across the southern border. A lot tougher now. And the same thing here. Once people are in your jurisdiction, in your territory, it's much harder then to go into any form of enforcement and, you know, and stop them. But I mean, fees, in terms of, you know, rules are quite different for people that are not in the country yet from people that are already in the country. That's the main distinction. So he could do it, but of course you'll have lots of commentators coming and arguing about the proportionality of all this and whether it's right to ban a whole country because of a mischief by a few people. But in terms of technical feasibility, yes, I think it is possible.
I mean, his national security advisor has recommended it. It sounds as though Trump has endorsed the proposal. He's retweeted it, basically, on his social media platform. But do you think it's actually something he's really going to do? Or is this a question of Trump sort of talking big, getting his base on side and then sort of quietly backing down at the last minute?
Well, we never know with President Trump quite what is going to happen, do we? I mean, I personally think it is a really big ask to ban an entire country, you know, from entering at all. I mean, I could see cohorts of people, you know, that could be added to a watch list. I mean, he could do that if he's got intelligence that certain people coming from certain countries should be banned, then that's within his gift. I think whether, you know, you're going to actually issue a blanket ban for everybody from a particular country is a big ask, really, because there are economic benefits to people coming from all over the world to the States and to the UK. You know, they spend their dollars there, and he won't want to shut off that revenue stream entirely. So, you know, there's a balancing act here, and I'd be interested to see how far he finally does go. But clearly, there's a lot of anger in America right now about the fact that people from certain countries seem to be disproportionately committing crimes, and I'm sure, you know, that the American people want the government to do something about that.
Certainly, although I suppose it is a fairly blunt instrument with which Americans can do something about it, just by sort of blocking off one country. Now, that country might produce people that are more predisposed on an average basis to commit some kind of crime, but that doesn't mean that everyone will be committing some kind of crime. And, of course, America does generate quite a lot of its own homegrown crime. You then get into thorny difficulties of dual citizens and all the rest of it. I mean, it does seem quite a bit more complicated than at first it might appear.
Yes, you're right, Tom. Of course, it's complicated, and there are all kinds of, you know, peculiarities about border control, homegrown terrorism. You know, I lived through a lot of that in my time with 7/7. You know, we were looking for mischief from foreigners, and actually mischief was coming from people who had British passports who were crossing our border. So it's complicated. It's not simple or straightforward. But I can see why he's saying it. I can see, you know, there's mood music, I think, out there that we need to try and do more with our visa operation. So I'm concerned about we are granting too too many visas to people we shouldn't be. If you look at our asylum figures, more people coming in on visas now than on small boats, which is outrageous. We should be clamping down on visas to make sure that only people who...
And this is people, just to be clear, this is people who say they're coming to visit temporarily and then just don't leave.
Yeah, so I was a visa officer, believe it or not, back in the day, Tom. I went to Bangladesh and interviewed people, and they'd say, I'm going on a holiday to Solihull to see my uncle for 2 weeks. And I'd say, well, how much money do you earn a year? It was about 30 quid. And, is there any likelihood? So there were refusal on credibility grounds, whether it's for, employment or family reunification. Are you genuinely... All that kind of investigative work goes into a visa operation. And I'm worried we're losing that a little bit in the pressure of customer service, to get more revenue, to get more people to come, which is a good thing. We do need people to come here and spend their money here. But I am worried about the integrity of the visa operation, Tom, and that it's our first line of defence, really. Once people have got a visa, then they're here, then it's much, much more difficult to enforce any action than rather than refusing visas. So I would like to see a conversation about how are we managing our visa operation these days.
Suddenly all those questions at the border of various countries that you're, where are you staying? When's your flight back? Suddenly they all make sense. Tony Smith, thanks indeed for joining us, former Director General of UK Border Force.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, new figures show nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow don't speak English as a first language. Stay tuned for all the details.
All of that and much more after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you at 12:34. Well, in the next few moments, major reforms are set to be announced to clear court backlogs. David Lammy preparing to scale back the number of jury trials. Magistrates could soon hand down sentences of up to 18 months, possibly 24, and a new judge-only court will be handling cases carrying up to 3 years in jail. Juries stay for the most serious crimes, but Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says the plans are just another gimmick.
It is not the answer. The answer is to just get a grip. They don't know how to do anything. Everything that this government touches is a shambles.
That comes as this morning, David Lammy admitted 2 prisoners are still at large following a spike in accidental releases. 12 inmates have been wrongly freed in just 3 weeks on top of 91 earlier this year. He says human error in a paper-based system's to blame until prisons go finally fully digital. A critical week for Ukrainian peace talks. Vladimir Putin set to meet US envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow today. Kyiv insists, though, its sovereignty isn't up for negotiation, warning tough issues remain. New laws here this week will give immigration enforcement sweeping new powers, including searching phones, coats and even inside mouths for hidden SIM cards. It's all aimed at tracking down people smuggling gangs behind the Channel crossings. And UK airports are bracing for the busiest Christmas getaway ever. More than 22 million passengers expected this month, with Heathrow alone handling over 7 million travellers. Those are the headlines. More in half an hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Thanks very much. Now, there's lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yes, drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe.
And we'll be heading to Downing Street, speaking with our political editor, of course, and hearing from David Lammy, speaking in the Commons just in the next couple of minutes. You want to stay with us to see that after these short messages. All of that, more to come, of course, with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following the washout that was Monday, today's a much drier and brighter day for most of us. Some decent sunny spells out there, albeit with a few heavy showers still knocking about, particularly towards the southwest. We've got low pressure sitting to the north and west of the UK, bringing spells of showers in from the Atlantic, and those showers will be prevalent across the south coast
into southwest Wales, as well as some parts of western Scotland. But away from these showery areas, well, some decent blue skies and mostly dry through the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. And it's going to be blustery out there. It's going to feel cool, but at least it will be drier and brighter compared with how we've started the week. But the showers will be lively where they occur, and they'll contain hail and thunder in places, particularly around immediate coasts of the south and southwest. They'll make inroads further inland as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland mostly escaping them with clear spells. Northern England, eastern Scotland staying clear as well. Some patchy cloud over the Highlands and Grampians, but showers for Scotland mostly around western and northern coasts. Across England and Wales, though, as the sun goes down, we will see these showers move across, and they'll tend to pop up just about anywhere as the night wears on. But again, some clear spells here and there. North East England, eastern Scotland, seeing temperatures drop away, a touch of frost in some sheltered parts, and a few fog patches as well to wake up to on Wednesday morning. But Wednesday morning, actually, very similar to Tuesday morning. Plenty of bright weather out there. A brisk breeze, yes, around southern and western coast. That's actually going to increase as the day goes on, and further showers, particularly once more around southern and western coast. One or two moving across southern Scotland. But actually, once again, plenty of sunny spells out there.
Thank you so much for helping us to reach 8 million followers and subscribers across our social media channels. That's 8 million fearless Brits standing up for what really matters.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists on the M74 northbound at junction 17 should expect delays due to a lane restriction for maintenance work. In Surrey, a major accident on the M25 clockwise has closed 3 lanes between junctions 10 and 11, causing severe delays and congestion. In Cornwall, the westbound A30 faces disruption due to an overturned vehicle. 1 lane is closed as recovery operations proceed. And on the trains, Thameslink services between London St Pancras International and London Bridge are experiencing significant disruptions with delays and cancellations reported. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past midday, and we're expecting any moment to hear from the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, laying out to Parliament in detail for the first time what really his plans are when it comes to jury systems.
Yes, we've heard a lot trailed, but we haven't actually yet had a conversation in Parliament, which is quite unusual, actually. You would expect something like this to be spoken about in front of the House first and foremost, but David Lammy doesn't seem to want to talk to the House about it, possibly because he's had so many unfortunate encounters at the dispatch box in the last few weeks.
Certainly. Well, there are some big questions still hanging over this. I mean, will this be a time-limited measure? Will there be a sunset clause to allow jury trials to return when the backlog is cleared? Just how many different sentences will be affected by this change? I mean, we know that jury trials are reducing. Will it be that anyone being sentenced to a 2-year sentence will have to be only judged by a magistrate, not a jury? Will it be 3 years? Will it be 4 years? You know, at which point will it fall?
And also, what sort of crimes are going to be tried only by magistrates? We've heard that the most serious crimes, so we know that rape and murder will still be tried by a jury, but what about something like serious sexual offences? I think that the public would probably think that that should be tried by a jury. Of course, there are some cases, things like fraud, complicated fraud cases. Those take up a lot of court time, and very often juries who are involved with them say they don't really think that that those should be tried by jury because it can be so complicated that it's very difficult for a layperson to really understand what's going on. So there are some cases which are much less controversial than others, and I hope we hear from David Lammy exactly which kind of cases will now be tried by a jury and which will be tried by magistrates.
It does seem that there has been a sort of lack of imagination, though, just restricting what the justice system does rather than how they do it. But let's listen to David Lammy now, the Justice Secretary, just getting into position there at the House of Commons. The Speaker, of course, calling his name, David Lammy.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will make a statement on criminal court reform. As the is aware, the first part of the independent review of criminal courts was published in July. I'm grateful to its chair, Sir Brian Levison, one of the foremost judges of his generation, and his expert advisors, Professor David Omeronde, Chris Mayer and Sean McNally. With this review, Sir Brian has produced a blueprint for once-in-a-generation court reform. It's desperately needed, Mr. Speaker, because this government inherited an emergency in our courts. A record of rising backlog, currently at 78,000 cases. Victims facing agonising delays, with some trials not listed for years. All the while, defendants bide their time. The guilty plea rate has decreased every year since the year 2000. And in the year to June, 11,000 cases were dropped after a charge because victims no longer supported or felt they could support the case. Behind the statistics are real people. Katie was repeatedly abused by her partner. She reported him to the police in 2017, but then had an unbearable 6-year wait for justice. During this time, she lost a job due to her mental health deteriorating. She became increasingly isolated, lived in fear, and lost faith in the court system. Mr. Speaker, this is not isolated, it's systemic. We're all proud of our justice system rooted in the Magna Carta, but we must never forget that it implores us not to deny or delay justice. When victims are left waiting for years, justice is effectively denied to them. And this is a betrayal of our legal heritage, and it's a betrayal of the victims themselves. Some will ask why we don't simply increase funding. This government has already invested heavily in the courts, nearly 150 million to make them fit for purpose, 92 million committed per year for criminal legal aid solicitors, and funding for a record number of sitting days in our Crown Courts, 5,000 more than those funded last year by the previous government. Today I can announce up to £34 million per year in additional funding for criminal legal aid advocates to recognise the vital support that they give to those navigating the system. I will also accept Sir Brian's recommendation to match fund a number of pupilages in the criminal area, to open a career at the criminal bar to more young people from across society. I will also negotiate sitting days with the senior judiciary through the usual Concordat process, aiming to give an unprecedented 3-year certainty to the system. I'm clear that sitting days in the Crown Court and Magistrates' Courts must continue to rise, and my ambition is to continue breaking records by the end of this Parliament. But as Sir Brian has made clear, investment is not enough. The caseload is projected to reach 100,000 by 2028, and without fundamental change could keep rising, meaning justice will be denied to more victims and trust in the system will collapse. Mr. Speaker, to avoid that disaster, I will follow Sir Brian's bold blueprint for change. First, I will create new swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either-way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials. And whilst jury deliberations remain confidential, judges provide reasoning for their verdicts in open court. So this will hardwire transparency into our new approach. Sir Brian also proposes restricting defendants' right to elect for jury trials, a practice not found widely in other common law jurisdictions. And let's be honest, it's a peculiar way to run a public service. Our world-leading judges should hear the most serious cases, and I agree that they and the magistrate should decide where a case is heard. This will prevent defendants from gaming the system, choosing whichever court they think gives the best chance of success, and drawing out the process, hoping victims give up. And I will limit appeals from the Magistrates' Court so that they are only allowed on points of law to prevent justice being delayed further. Alongside these changes, we will increase magistrates' court sentencing powers to 18 months, so they can take a greater proportion of lower-level offending and relieve pressure on the Crown Court. I will also take power to extend that to 2 years, should it become necessary to leave further pressure. And when it comes to exceptionally technical and lengthy fraud and financial trials, judges will be able to sit without a jury where appropriate. While these cases are small in number, they place undue pressures on jurors to sit for months, a significant interference with their personal and professional lives. These reforms are bold, Mr. Speaker, but they're necessary. I'm clear that jury trials will continue to be the cornerstone of the system for the most serious offences, those likely to receive a sentence over 3 years and all indictable-only offences. Among others, this will include rape, murder, manslaughter, grievous bodily harm, robbery and arson with intent to kill. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to clear up some misconceptions that colleagues unfamiliar in this area might hold. In England and Wales, magistrates have long done the vast majority of criminal cases. That was true in the Victorian era, it's right through to Winston Churchill's time, and today magistrates hear about 90% of criminal cases. In fact, only 3% of trial cases in England and Wales will ever go before a jury, and almost 3/4 of all trials going to the Crown Court will continue to be heard by them under our changes. The party opposite talk about the Crown Court as if it were an ancient institution. I should remind them that it was established in 1971, the year before I was born, to replace a patchwork of part-time courts unable to cope with the rising caseload. Parliament acted because the country needed a more efficient system that could command public confidence. We now face an emergency in the courts, and we must act. As Lord Chancellor, my responsibility is to ground reform in the rule of law and the right to a fair trial. We will ensure cases are dealt with at the right level, proportionate to their severity, and deliver the swifter justice victims deserve. I'm also clear that we must future-proof our approach. Technology is changing almost every aspect of our lives, and the courts can be no exception. This means that we must modernise, Mr. Speaker. We have asked Sir Brian to write a second report focused on efficiency and how we can make much better use of technology to deliver the modern and effective courts the public rightly expect. Mr. Speaker, we'll also continue to support victims to make sure that they have the confidence to come forward and see justice through to its conclusion. I announced this week that I will provide multi-year funding for victim support services, including specialist emotional and practical support for victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse, and increase budgets to reflect rising costs. And this will give providers a certainty to plan for the next 3 years. And it amounts to a total investment, a record investment in victims of £550 million, more than £500 million. I want those victims to stay the course. Finally, we must also be honest that this is a problem that has taken years to build up. It will take years to fix. The changes I'm proposing will require legislation that will take time to implement. Our investment will also need time to have an effect. But we are pulling every possible lever to move in a positive direction, and my ambition for the backlog to start coming down by the end of this Parliament remains. And I commend this statement to the House.
We now come to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Gemley.
Well, I'm glad to see that the Justice Secretary has finally come into work today. When 12 prisoners were mistakenly released after the introduction of his brilliant new checks, he didn't bother to come to Parliament to inform the country. Then when I asked his department whether it's paying compensation to terrorists in prison, he didn't show up. And when the news of his plans to scrap jury trials mysteriously emerged in the press last week, he was nowhere to be seen. Like the prisoners under his watch, he's been a man on the run, the Lammy Dodger of this sorry charade for a government. But now today we are blessed with his presence, and his past is catching up with him, because the best opponent of the Justice Secretary's plans to curb jury trials is the Justice Secretary himself. In 2020, he said, "Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. You don't fix the backlog with trials that are widely perceived as unfair.
Remember that, David.
In 2017, in his report into prejudice in the criminal justice system, he found juries, and I quote, act as a filter for prejudice. But now he's become Justice Secretary, he's scrapping the very institution he once lauded. Which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up? And it isn't just him. Who can guess which Labour MP said taking away jury trials would be a wholly draconian act?
Is it Mary Antoinette?
It's his junior minister. And what about this? There should be a right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Any ideas, Mr. Speaker? Who else? It's the Prime Minister this time. Does this government have no shame? Now, yesterday the Justice Secretary boldly claimed that if the medieval barons were around today, they'd support his changes. Well, then again, English history has never been his specialist subject, has it? 800 years on from the Magna Carta, we have another unpopular leader who doesn't listen to his subjects, levies eye-watering taxes, and a state that locks people up for what they say. Well, I say the link between British citizens and the administration of justice is as important as ever. A link that serves as a check on an occasionally overbearing state. Our ancestors did not stop bad King John, only to be undone 800 years later by this Prime Minister and his court jester. And all of this because the Justice Secretary can't manage his own department. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone. In fact,
can I just gently say, I wanted, quite rightly, the Justice Secretary to be heard without comment from the front benches, so I certainly expect the same in return. Do we understand? Thank you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone. In fact, over 21,000 court days have gone unused this year. And why? Not because there are too many juries, but because the Justice Secretary won't fund the sitting days. Had he done so, the backlog would have shrunk by up to 10,000 cases rather than the fact it's risen this year. The truth is, scrapping juries is a choice. This government could find the money to bear down on the backlog of asylum claims. It could find the money to spend more on benefits, just not to fund the courts to sit round the clock. Last year, the entire budget for courts and legal aid was £5.5 billion. Almost exactly the same amount of money, £5.4 billion, that we spent on illegal migrants. He defends their rights under the ECHR, but not our rights under Magna Carta. And for what? He can't even guarantee that in 4 years' time, this will reduce the backlog. With this Justice Secretary, it is justice delayed and justice denied. So I ask him, much of the rest of the package announced today is sensible, but why has it taken 17 months? The Bar Council, the Law Society, the Criminal Bar Association have all said that jury trials are not the problem.
You're facing the wrong way. It's very hard when you're looking at the doors. Thank you.
Just Mr. Speaker. So why did he not start by reforming the probation service, the court listings, and tackling delays from late prison transfers? Why has he still not taken up the Lady Chief Justice on all the sitting days she's offered him? And lastly, why on earth does this Justice Secretary think he has a mandate to rip up centuries of jury trials without even a mention of it in his party's manifesto? In his twisted logic, he says he's scrapping juries to save them. But be in no doubt, if the Justice Secretary gets away with this, is the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing for good.
Justice Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Shadow Justice Secretary, and I am a little surprised that in his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog. He's boasted about himself as an armchair historian. Can I just give him a history lesson, Mr. Speaker? In 2019, sitting days in the Crown Court were cut by almost 15%. They oversaw a 12% reduction in Crown Court trials. And many of us remember, over those 14 years of austerity, the magistrates' courts that closed in local communities, the Crown courts that closed in local communities under his watch. It was a political decision, not my words, the words of the senior presiding judge of England and Wales. I wonder how he'll try to blame the pandemic for that decision. He talks about what I tweeted in 2020. We are saving and protecting jury trials. Jury trials will continue. He talks about trial by jury as if we live in the United States. 90% of criminal trials, 1.3 million, are done by our magistrate in this country, which has existed for 650 years, and we are going to grow our magistrates who we believe could do more. He talks about the Magna Carta. Yes, Article 9 establishes the jury trial, which we are proud of, and 39 establishes the jury trial, and it establishes a fair trial. But he knows too that Article 40 asks us not to delay justice, and that is the substance of this debate, and that is why we need reform. He knows too that the Conservatives took juries away from defamation cases in 2013. Back in 1933, we had juries sitting in civil cases. So of course we reform to meet the needs of the system. He knows also that because of DNA evidence, because of CCTV, for a whole raft of reasons, police arresting 10% more, we have a demand issue. We must meet that challenge, and we must ensure that we put the victim at the centre of our criminal justice system. That's who it's there for, and it's why he should have mentioned them.
Andy Slaughter, Chair of the Justice Committee.
Mr. Speaker, can I first recognise the commitment of the Lord Chancellor, the Minister of State, in...
There we have it. We now know that jury trials will be stripped from any case where the sentence could be under 3 years.
It actually goes further. David Lammy there kept talking about that Brian Levinson report, which was published, and he said that he was taking on Brian Levinson's recommendations. But actually, what he's proposing today goes a lot further than what Levinson recommended. What Levinson recommended was that some of the most serious cases, and he talked a lot about complicated fraud cases, could be tried by magistrates and 2 judges. What David Lammy is talking about is single judges only. So he's actually going a step further. And actually, the number of cases that could be tried by just a single judge is much higher than what Levinson was originally proposing. So this is even more radical than that pretty radical report.
It was extraordinary to hear, actually, perhaps both the Justice Secretary and Shadow Justice Secretary at times talking cross purposes. I mean, a lot of detail there in David Lammy's speech, and I suppose that Robert Jenrick didn't have the detail ahead of time, so it was more on the principle, because there is a sense of principle here, that there is something fundamental about people having the right to be heard in a jury trial. If it is so many different sentences right now, and yes, it does lean towards the more serious end. We did hear from David Lammy, of course, that only 3% of cases go before juries, but I imagine the 3% are the things that we would think of when we think of a trial, rather than the sort of family courts things that perhaps aren't quite so significant.
Well, exactly. It's something that David Lammy was keen to hammer home, how few trials are done by jury. But I'm not sure if that's particularly comforting. More of this after break. Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. I'm Olivia Utley.
And I'm Tom Harwood. Now, David Lammy has scrapped thousands of jury trials as he claims keeping tradition will lead to collapse. The Justice Secretary says jury trials must only be reserved for those accused of the most serious crimes.
And his defence is he's saving the jury system that goes back to Magna Carta in 1215. But the Tories say, unite with us and fight it. Let's see who's going to win.
And another jail fail for David Lammy as it's revealed 12 further prisoners have been accidentally released in the past 3 weeks, with a manhunt still on for 2 of them.
Elsewhere, an investigation into the Hillsborough disaster found 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame fans in the aftermath.
And new figures show nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow doesn't speak English as a first language. Stay tuned for more details on that.
Now, drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe.
And a shelter charity caring for and rehoming abandoned animals for 30 years. But now they're being forced to move to a housing development.
Well, Holbrook Animal Shelter here in Horsham is being forced to relocate, and if they can't find a suitable location, dogs like this could lose their lifeline.
Well, it's a busy day, of course, and it's a serious announcement from David Lammy.
Well, absolutely huge and, you know, sweeping aside centuries of history, really. There are those who say that just because we did something back in 1215 doesn't mean we should still do it now. There are lots of examples of traditions that we have dropped since the Magna Carta was sealed in 1215. But this is a huge, huge change which will have a real impact on ordinary Brits.
Certainly, and I think that sometimes statistics can be misused in this frame. David Lammy saying that only 3% of trials go to jury right now. I wonder, actually, if when we think of something that goes to a trial, I mean, that the 97%, we might...
People not paying their TV licences, for example, that's a crime which probably you wouldn't expect to be tried by a jury.
And obviously, someone not paying their TV licence, I mean, how many people do that? Right? So you're going to have a massive, massive bulk of, I mean, people going through the justice system for a fine of £100 or whatever, you know. Speeding, exactly. So when we talk about the 97%, it sounds like, the jury trials are basically non-existent in our system. But no, I mean, that's because there is a very, very long tail of very, very, very minor things. Talking about someone going to prison for 3 years, now not being tried by jury, that's a serious shift.
That's burglaries, that's sexual offences, that's the stuff that we think of as very, very serious indeed.
Well, much more on that, of course, throughout the programme. But now, an investigation into the Hillsborough disaster by the Independent Office for Police Conduct has found that 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures on the day as a concerted effort to blame fans in the aftermath.
However, no officers will face disciplinary proceedings as they had all retired before the allegations began.
Well, is the Hillsborough Families Justice Campaign ever going to get justice?
Our national reporter Will Godley has been following the story and he is in the studio to give us the latest. Now, Will, explain what's going on here.
Well, yeah, this report out just in the last few minutes. A long-awaited report, first commissioned 13 years ago. It's racked up a huge bill of £150 million, but finally today, some 35 years after what is still the worst sporting disaster in British history, bereaved families and victims finally getting answers to where these police misconduct took place. And the report highlighting that most of it, the misconduct was down to the fact police officers in the immediate aftermath of the disaster shifted the blame onto the Liverpool fans for what happened, this crush, rather than taking any responsibility for perhaps not policing in the correct manner. So 12 12 police officers, this report says, would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures and concerted efforts to blame fans. And those police officers named go right to the top of South Yorkshire Police. The then Chief Constable, Peter Wright, the report says, attempted to promote a false narrative and shift blame away from the police force that he was in charge of. It also names the chief superintendent who was overseeing the police's operation on the day, David Duckenfield, who was cleared of gross negligence manslaughter back in 2019. This report, though, says he froze in crisis and says he would have had to answer 10 allegations of gross misconduct. Someone else who the report names is Sir Norman Bettison, who went on to become the Chief Constable of Merseyside Police. This report says he misled the people who appointed him in that job, saying he was deliberately dishonest about his involvement in what happened at Hillsborough and that he misled the public in the aftermath. And now this report said it found 92 misconduct complaints that have been upheld or found cases to answer, but it said there wasn't enough evidence to say there was an orchestrated cover-up by South Yorkshire Police. There has been some reaction to this long-awaited report, including from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who in the last few moments has said the unlawful killing of the 97 at Hillsborough 36 years ago is a stain on our nation's history, and today serves as a stark reminder of one of the most significant failings in policing the country has ever seen. She went on to pay her tribute to the families and survivors and also says that legislation is now in place to avoid anything like this from ever happening again. Of course, talking about the Hillsborough law requiring police officers to have a duty of candour wasn't in place at the time, some 36 years ago. And one of the reasons why, despite 12 police officers being named in this report today, no police officer will face any disciplinary actions as a result of this misconduct proceedings. And that is something that the bereaved families are criticising today, saying it is a bitter injustice that no one would be held to account even after this long-awaited report has been published, saying the outcome may vindicate the bereaved families and survivors who have fought for decades to expose the truth, but today delivers no justice to them and their families.
Well, thank you very much, Will Godley, for giving us the latest on that report.
Absolutely, and do get involved. gbnews.com/your say is, of course, the way to get involved.
And Justice Secretary David Lammy will lay out plans to curb the right for a jury trial. He has already done that as part of efforts to tackle the court's emergency and reduce the backlog. Moments ago, the Justice Secretary announced the move in the Commons.
First, I will create new Swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials.
Well, that was David Lammy speaking moments ago. However, the proposals demonstrate a change of heart for the Justice Secretary, who tweeted 5 years ago, "Jury trials are a fundamental part of our democratic settlement. Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea."
And all of this comes as the Justice Secretary admitted that 12 prisoners have been accidentally released in the past 3 weeks. So will this move help stop the chaos in our criminal justice system? Well, let's get the thoughts of our political editor, Christopher Hope. We've all been waiting for that speech from David Lammy for a long time. It seems quite odd that he didn't announce this in front of the House of Commons in the very first instance. What did you make of it now we finally heard it?
Yes, I mean, hi Tom, hi Olivia. I think he was definitely on the defensive. He knows what's happening here. Article 9 of Magna Carta 1215 does guarantee all of us a jury trial, and that's why you heard that vituperative attack on the plans there from Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's pointing out there are options here for the government that don't involve removing jury trials. 50 Crown Court rooms sat empty in England, he says. 21,000 court days unused so far this year. He thinks it's possible that you can do other ideas. We heard earlier from Michael Ellis, the former Tory Attorney General. He thinks that more investment could speed speed up the process. In fact, the Justice Secretary said that doing this will only speed up the cases by 20%. He says it'll only apply to cases where the possible sentence is more than 3 years in jail, so it won't be the most serious cases, just less serious on the scale, and that magistrates will do more and more of our justice work in the system. They'll be able to sentence to up to 18 months from a year. It's meant to deal with this backlog of 80,000 cases in the Crown Court. That'll go to 100,000 by 2028. But I was struck by David Lammy. He couldn't even say this backlog will fall by the next election, due in 2029. But clearly they feel something has got to be done. But there is a real moment here in our politics. We don't really think much about these fundamental rights of being British, but they are really important. Enshrined by Magna Carta in 1215, the right to a jury trial is one of them. And the big concern is this will be the thin end of the wedge. Once they've crossed this Rubicon of removing the right to jury trial, where will it end? We've seen before how governments can get more authoritarian. I think back to Tony Blair's government and 90-day detention without charge under terror laws. That was fought back to 28 days by Conservatives and a combination of Lib Dems too. So there's a concern here, I think, that it's maybe the thin end of the wedge.
Chris, was there any mention there that we were talking before about some sort of sunset clause, the idea that once the backlog had been lessened somewhat, then we might go back to full jury services? But I don't think I heard David Lammy mention anything about that in his speech.
No, that's right, Olivia. It was an issue raised in the lobby briefing I've just been at, and that wasn't discussed there. The idea of a sunset clause, I'd imagine, will be where the opposition goes in the House of Commons. As David Lammy said, this must be subject to a vote in the House of Commons. A new law must be brought in. I imagine the Lords may have something to say about it too, with all the retired judges there and retired senior lawyers. They may think, well, OK for now, and this, of course, is a response to the doubling in the backlog built up by the COVID pandemic. Therefore, shouldn't it be time limited with a so-called sunset clause? The government did say in our briefing just now that 90% of cases are heard in magistrates' courts. Of the remaining 10%, 7% of defendants plead guilty, so only 3% are heard before a jury. So the concern might be this could be a sledgehammer to crack a nut. If you want to go ahead with it, then why not make it a sunset issue? Actually, while I've got you, I should talk about these 2 escaped prisoners. Now, Number 10 says, I think we were surprised at GBNews to see David Lammy disclose that there were 2 on-the-run prisoners released in error. He disclosed that in interviews with other broadcasters today. He won't come on GBNews. We don't know why, but he won't come on, so we see it reported elsewhere. Number 10 say that the DPM has been transparent on this, and in the cases like this, it is a police operational lead. So they're saying that it's the police saying don't disclose these prisoners on the run, despite arguably there's a wide public interest.
Very, very curious that there seem to have been quite so many released prisoners in 2025 alone. I mean, this is more than double under the previous ministry, under the previous government. We've seen a precipitous rise in the number of accidental releases. Does the government have anything to say about why this keeps happening?
Well, they blame the lack of digitalisation in the prison service. They say that it's quite difficult to run an early release scheme brought in by Labour in September last year to ease the overcrowding, which they say amassed during the Tory government. And because of that, often you have to calculate how much less of your term inside is required, and it can be difficult. I mean, we had been told by David Lammy that all
calculators were invented hundreds of years ago.
Governors.
Do prison officers not have access to an iPhone app where they can just put in a calculator? I mean, it's not rocket science to take a percentage off a sentence number. Why can't these people do that?
Tom, don't ask me. I'm giving you what the government says. I mean, you've got a very good point. Calculators do exist, of course they exist. But whatever it is, they have to calculate when they can leave early. Some are left too early. Some are allowed to walk out, as we've seen. Some try and get back in and can't get back in. It is chaotic. They do blame this on the previous government, and this government is trying to get to grips with what is a huge backlog in cases, 80,000. I mean, it is 3 or 4 year wait to see a cases get to court, and imagine how it is for the witnesses. And in that response from David Lammy, I thought he made a good point to Robert Jenrick, who was spluttering, of course, about the constitutional issues here, but the victims have to wait 3 or 4 years to try and give evidence against the perpetrator who may have hurt them or whatever. I mean, I think that is so long to wait and have that hanging over people for so long. Well, it does almost justify some of these measures.
Well, absolutely, and you have a situation where eyewitnesses are forgetting what they saw a few years ago, not to mention the defendants who are waiting around to be tried for years while their entire life is put on hold. It is quite an extraordinary situation, and you can sympathise with Lammy wanting to get something done. Whether this was the right thing to do, I think remains a question to be answered. Well, thank you very much to our political editor, Chris Hope.
Now, of course, if you do want to get involved in this conversation, you can, of course, get involved in the You Decide section of our GB News website. You can become a friend of GB News and answer the question, do you have confidence in our justice system? At the moment, just 3% of you have confidence in our justice system, which is a pretty staggeringly low number, actually.
Staggering, absolutely.
A little bit worrying,
Very,
frankly.
very worrying indeed. GB News viewers not on the fence on this one. Please do get in touch and let us know what you think.
Well, we'll be coming back to that poll later in the show, of course. But now we're joined by the political commentator, Sebastian Salek. Seb, thanks for joining us. This is a difficult thing for the Justice Secretary to put forward because it's such a fundamental part of how we think of the justice system in this country.
It is, and do you know what? I think for that reason, it's not an ideological move. David Lammy is a barrister, Keir Starmer is a barrister. When you study law, you get it drilled into you that parts of our system, like jury trials, are really important. I, many years ago, studied law as well. Didn't quite make it into the profession, but you really do get that hammered into you. And so I'm a big fan of juries too. But I think this is more about being pragmatic. They've got a problem in front of them. They've got a big backlog. It's got to come down somehow. And that's why I don't think this is a particularly political move. It's more of a practical one, because as Chopper mentioned, and I think this was really the key point, if you are the victim of a crime, you're going to be waiting a long time for that to go to court. That is going to be a harrowing process for you to have to wait. That's a period of your life you can't put behind you. I think all of us want to see these crimes get tried, have an outcome, and then everybody involved can either face justice, get on with their life, whatever, which is much better than hanging in limbo.
But Seb, if this is a practical issue, then you would think that David Lammy could at least promise that the backlog would be reduced once you have taken these measures into account. He wasn't able to promise to do that. And Christopher Hope suggested there that this could be a case of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Only 3%, as David Lammy kept reiterating, of trials are tried by a jury. Is this actually the root of the problem, or is it something flashy and interesting which will grab headlines and make it look as though the Justice Secretary is doing something, while perhaps not having that great an effect on the backlog?
Yeah, well, my understanding was he didn't say this isn't going to reduce the numbers. He's saying, I can't say how many it's going to reduce it by. And to come to your other point, the number I'm seeing is that there are still 30,000 trials that are seen by juries. So it's a small percentage, yes, because so many criminal cases are in the magistrates' courts, the lower tier, they're lower offences, they don't need a jury, and that's fine. But that still leaves a lot of very serious crimes that need to be seen, that aren't being seen, and the only way to speed things up at the moment is to put those in front of a judge. Remember, this isn't any lower form of justice. There is still a judge looking at this. They're just removing the jury element.
Which is slightly worrying. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Currently, the magistrates-only offences in this country are crimes like speeding, like not having a television licence, fishing without a licence, perhaps relevant to the Foreign Secretary, to the now Deputy Prime Minister, consuming alcohol in a designated public place. I mean, no one really thinks of these as incredibly serious crimes. I mean, even drink driving is something that you can have a jury for. Not always, but you can. Now, if we're going to say suddenly that any crime that carries a 3-year sentence is not going to have the right to have a jury hear it, I mean, that is I think we might be beating around the bush a little bit by just saying, 3% of crimes are heard by jury right now. Of what we think of as crimes, That's a much, much larger percentage. That's not to trivialise not having a television licence. Of course, it's a beastly crime to not have a television licence in this country. But come on. I mean, it's not. We're talking about cases like Hadash Kabatu here.
Yeah, and when I think about this, I put myself in the position of somebody who has had a crime committed against them. And at the moment, you're really given a choice, aren't you? You can either go and have that heard by a jury, but the flip side is you have to wait several years. I think, given the choice, I would probably say no. I want this heard now. Don't worry about the jury. Let's crack on. I want to see justice done. I want to see whoever has committed the crime against me face their own justice, and then I can move on with my life. That's much more preferable. And you know, you see a lot of people reaching for Magna Carta. I think that's a huge mistake as well, mainly based on a misreading of what's in there. It's not just that no one will go to prison unless they have had the judgment of their peers. The alternative is the law of the land, which is what every crime is. Nobody goes to prison without having committed a crime. So those who are reaching back for those ancient documents to try to justify modern day decisions, I would say go and do a little bit more homework.
Oh no! You can't override the Magna Carta like that. It's not the text of the Magna Carta that applies today. It's the principle that was founded then and has grown like a coral over the course of centuries. I mean, that's the important point.
Completely agree, and that's why I'm saying that those who are arguing Magna Carta are misunderstanding it, because what it says is that nobody should go to prison unless either they've had a jury trial or the law of the land says it. So we're following it completely, that aspect, to the letter. The other
but that's a textual interpretation.
No, that is just me reading out words to you.
That is what that means.
Otherwise, is misunderstanding Magna Carta. It's plain in the document. What I'd also say is there's another part about delaying justice, and that's the part that Lammy's invoking. That is equally important, and we mustn't delay justice.
Well, thank you very much, political commentator Seb Salak. And if Seb has persuaded you, please do join our poll. Let us know what you think. At the moment, 97% of viewers don't have don't have faith in the justice system. Pretty worrying statistic there.
I'm not sure I actually believe them. I mean, surely you sort of have to have a level of faith in the justice system. Otherwise, I mean, sort of, what does anything mean in this country, you know?
Tom's getting very philosophical and poetic this morning. I like the analogy of the coral growing.
Oh, yeah.
This is Good Afternoon.
That's a reference to common law. But anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yes. Drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe. But after the break...
New figures show that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow don't speak English as a first language, or even Scots Gaelic. Stay tuned for more details.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1. Now, new data collected by the Scottish Government has shown that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow don't speak English as their first language.
Yes, almost 29% of students in the city's schools speak English as a second language, the highest in the whole of Scotland.
Well, Glasgow currently accommodates more asylum seekers than any other local authority in the UK, subsequently earning its name Britain's asylum capital.
Well, joining us now is Reform UK Glasgow City Councillor Thomas Kerr. Now, Thomas, on the face of it, this looks quite alarming. Nearly a third of children not speaking English as a first language. I think the worry for parents, perhaps parents in Glasgow watching this, is that in schools that will mean a sort of race to the bottom, teachers having to accommodate pupils who don't speak English and the pupils who do speak English inevitably getting dragged down and held back as a result.
Yeah, that is the big issue that we're facing here in Glasgow. So to put it in context, Glasgow City Council has a budget deficit of £110 million in the next year to try and handle. When you put English as an additional language on top of that, that's a massive concern for parents. And you're right, the race to the bottom does exist. It means that many of our schools across the city will be having to use funds to try and teach kids the basics when actually they should be going to school with that already. And it puts a huge demand on other kids who are already there to then be able to get taught properly. So it's a huge concern. And as we heard in the piece there, you know, we are Britain's asylum capital. We have been warning for some time that this is likely to have happened. And the numbers today are just absolutely staggering.
Number a third run the risk of overemphasising it, as if these children can't speak English, because this does include children who can speak English perfectly well, just as their second language rather than their first.
It is, but also we need to remember that many of these kids will be taught inside the schools as well. So we have a programme in Glasgow for English as additional language. We have a specific education cohort that deals with that in terms of teachers. So the budget that is then put onto that then comes out of education in other places, Tom. So you're right that these kids can speak English. We're not saying that 1 in 3 kids in Glasgow can't speak English, but the number of people who are there means that pressure is still existing for the council. It's a huge concern.
So why has Glasgow become the asylum capital of Scotland, as it's being dubbed? I read that there is an issue with, because the SNP in Scotland allow people who've become accidentally homeless a house in Glasgow. You have people flocking to Glasgow to get a house, asylum seekers flocking to Glasgow and starting a family there. Is that what the issue is?
It's partly that. So we have a perfect storm in Glasgow where we are currently a dispersal city. We're Scotland's only dispersal city in the whole UK. That's why we're having so many people coming. But also in 2012, there was homelessness legislation that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP changed, which made our system up here much more fairer, where everybody was treated the exact same. So whether you're a single fighting age man who's came here who's a refugee, or whether you're a local Glasgow family, you're treated the exact same when it comes to priority for housing. So what's happening now is that many people who are granted leave to remain are coming to Glasgow to then declare themselves as homeless because they're then given a house straight away. So it's created this perfect storm of us being a dispersal city to deal with the asylum pressure alongside this issue when it comes to the homelessness legislation. So it's this sort of exacerbated sort of boiling point that Glasgow is now meant.
So whilst Glasgow is an absolute sort of asylum magnet for asylum seekers across the country getting that priority housing. I suppose the other half of this equation is just how many sort of native Glaswegian families are actually having kids, because like the rest of the country, the fertility rate has been falling in recent years, well below replacement. So, I mean, I suppose part of this large number of children who don't speak English as a first language is that there are a larger number of children who don't speak English as a first language. But the other part is the children that do speak English as a first language, there are less and less of them.
Yeah, but Tom, there's a reason for that. Many of the families who are staying in Glasgow are now moving out with the city to be able to get housing or get on the housing ladder. So we've seen a huge population shift away from people inside Glasgow and move into the outer suburbs of Glasgow, so Eastern Bartonshires, North Lanarkshires, other places like that. So we're losing people with that aspect. But also, I mean, I can speak as a father. I've got a 2.5-year-old myself. Bringing a child up in Glasgow is not the best thing at the moment. It feels like a city that is in decline. It feels like a city that is very unsafe. And many of the issues that we're facing in terms of budget pressures, in terms of asylum accommodation, in terms of housing, all of these things exacerbate the idea of why would you want to bring a child up in the current climate in this city? And as a Glaswegian, that's horrible to say. It's absolutely horrible. I love this city like mad. And to be able to say that is not something that's nice, but it is something that many parents and many young people will be looking at and saying, well, actually, why would I want to bring a child up in a city that feels like this now?
Every time I go to Glasgow, I think two things. Number one, look at the majesty of some of the architecture. I mean, it's a completely beautiful city. And then you just turn your head slightly and there's a big concrete motorway that's just slamming through the middle of it. Perhaps a trivial point, one on aesthetics. But I mean, there's so much that's so beautiful and brilliant about Glasgow that then just gets ruined by some choices that were made in the 1960s.
I'm happy to come on and do a whole segment on that, Tom. Anytime you want to have a discussion about Glasgow and architecture, I'm up for it.
Don't tempt him. Thank you very much, Reform UK Glasgow City Councillor Thomas Kerr.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do get your architecture thoughts in, gbnews.com/your say. But there's lots more coming on today's programme.
My dad, unfortunately, had to lose his life before the police took any action.
Yes, the daughter of a murdered dog walker hits out at police, saying her father's death could have been prevented. 8-year-old Bim Kahol was brutally killed by teenagers at his local park in Leicestershire. All of that and much more after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. Well, a major overhaul of jury trials. The Justice Secretary's confirmed some cases carrying sentences of 3 years or less will now be decided by a judge alone. David Lammy says the changes will help tackle the record Crown Court backlog. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick says scrapping jury trials is dangerous.
If the Justice Secretary gets away with this, it's the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing.
But David Lammy says victims deserve faster justice.
In his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog.
A long-awaited report says 12 ex-police officers would have faced gross misconduct charges over the Hillsborough disaster, but none of them could be disciplined because they'd already retired. The police watchdog found fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame fans, leaving families with what lawyers call another bitter injustice. New laws this week will give immigration enforcement officers sweeping new powers, including searching phones, coats and even inside mouths for hidden SIM cards. It's all aimed at tracking down people smuggling gangs behind channel crossings. And UK airports are bracing for the busiest Christmas getaway ever. More than 22 million passengers expected this month, with Heathrow alone handling over 7 million travellers. Those are the lunchtime headlines. I'll be back with you shortly.
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme.
Drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe.
Well, all of that and indeed more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following the washout that was Monday, today's a much drier and brighter day for most of us. Some decent sunny spells out there, albeit with a few heavy showers still knocking about, particularly towards the southwest. We've got low pressure sitting to the north and west of the UK, bringing spells of showers in from the Atlantic, and those showers will be prevalent across the south coast into southwest Wales, as well as some parts of western Scotland. But away from these showery areas, well, some decent blue skies and mostly dry through the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. And it's going to be blustery out there. It's going to feel cool, but at least it will be drier and brighter compared with how we've started the week. But the showers will be lively where they occur, and they'll contain hail and thunder in places, particularly around immediate coasts of the south and southwest. They'll make inroads further inland as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland mostly escaping them with clear spells. Northern England, eastern Scotland staying clear as well. Some patchy cloud over the Highlands and Grampians, but showers for Scotland mostly around western and northern coasts. Across England and Wales, though, as the sun goes down, we will see these showers move across, and they'll tend to pop up just about anywhere as the night wears on. But again, some clear spells here and there. North East England, eastern Scotland, seeing temperatures drop away, a touch of frost in some sheltered parts, and a few fog patches as well to wake up to on Wednesday morning. But Wednesday morning, actually, very similar to Tuesday morning. Plenty of bright weather out there. A brisk breeze, yes, around southern and western coast. That's actually going to increase as the day goes on, and further showers, particularly once more around southern and western coast. One or two moving across southern Scotland, but actually, once again, plenty of sunny spells out there.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the UK. We're truly humbled, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A720 at Sheriff Hall roundabout, a road collision has occurred, so please use caution. The A19 southbound near Durham has a broken down vehicle, likely causing delays. The A38 southbound in Derbyshire has congestion with 15-minute delays. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound has a lane closure. Kent's M25 anti-clockwise entry slip at Junction 1A faces a 10-minute delay due to congestion. And on the trains, Greater Anglia and Stansted Express report major disruption between Tottenham Hale and Cheshunt. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Well, in a shocking revelation, drug cartels are using ships packed with disease-ridden cattle to smuggle huge quantities of cocaine to Europe.
Yes, police are allegedly reluctant to seize the vessels, as it's said to be a logistical nightmare to deal with thousands of diseased cows, alongside being deterred by the foul-smelling conditions on board.
We're now joined by former Met Police Superintendent Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, what on earth is going on here? I had no idea that this was happening. So, drug cartels using the cows, how does it work?
Very badly by the sounds of it, or very well indeed, actually, because these are really what you call slick, organised criminal networks. Look, gone are the days when they used to pack them into fruit, containers and tins and teddy bears and all the other likes of stuff. Though these criminals have got a lot more slick, and they will use every opportunity to try and get their drugs across the world. You know, they come as far as South America to then come into Europe, and it's a billion dollar business. So they're going to use all the different tactics possible in order to be able to get that drug trafficking across the world. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's not something I'd actually heard of before, and I've done a lot of work with the drugs squads across my policing career, but certainly not to the scale that this is. This is international, cross-border challenges for all the agencies, including Interpol and, the other border agencies, the FBI, whoever it is that's involved. So quite a challenge, I think, and certainly something that is going to be really difficult for police to be able to combat because of the fact that you're talking about, in I think one incident, something like 1,700 cows that come across dead or alive and in conditions that are absolutely disgusting, and then it leaves them in a very difficult position of how do they actually secure this for forensic opportunities.
I suppose one of the questions is, are the ship people in on this, or are people latching their drugs onto ships that are already going? I mean, how do sort of operations like this work? I mean, we've heard all sorts of different things that have been smuggled before, like you say, inside of teddy bears or inside of food packages. Plausibly, that's not known about by the ships, the container ships, for example, that are taking them in. But with something like cows and then big packets of cocaine just there, presumably inside the ship, it does raise questions about whether the ship operators themselves are in the know.
I would suggest that the strong likelihood is that there will be a significant number of people on board these ships that will have some form of knowledge in relation to what's actually going on. For starters, those that are actually ferrying and smuggling the drugs through will want some leadership in there to make sure that it's smuggled appropriately without being caught and so on. But you'll get those that work in the ships that probably earn absolute peanuts, who will also be involved. Will keep their mouths shut, earn a fair bit of money, but also some that fear the fact that there be maybe repercussions for them if they do get caught out. This is a very, very slick, organised criminal network. You're not talking about people that work just across Europe. You're talking about criminals that work internationally together in partnership to be able to bring billions of pounds worth of drugs across from one country to the next. So it won't be something that, look, in my career, I remember that I used to deal with people who basically swallowed drugs, and we had people that come into our custody because of the fact that unfortunately the drugs had burst and they died. And you're talking about very small amounts of drugs. Here you're talking about huge tons and tons of consignments that we'll be working with in partnership with those agencies, as well as there will be some corrupt border police, international partners that will have knowledge that can help them ferry them through.
I want to pick up on that, actually. I mean, obviously, this is a very shameless way for these drug cartels to be operating. A massive, great ship full of very smelly cows will be attracting the attention of Border Force officials all over the place. But obviously, these cartels feel that they are able to do that. They feel that they'll be able to get away with it. Do you think that drug cartels are becoming more shameless, perhaps less afraid of Border Force?
Well, I think they're becoming more shameless in that they're using different type of tactics. This is probably quite clever in a way that it makes it very difficult for the border controls to be able to do all the checks and balances that they need to do in order to allow the cows to come through. And they probably don't want the hassle of it. But I think also, when you're talking about huge amounts of money, and when every time somebody gets caught and they're convicted, those criminals almost do like a review, like we would in policing, to do, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and what do they need to do in order to be able to, secure their criminal enterprise to be able to do the jobs that they do. And remember, there's a couple of other things here. Many of these criminal networks will have some kind of links to counter-terrorism, all sorts of other really serious criminal organised networks. I think you would have seen recently with what's going on in Venezuela, and President Trump don't know a huge amount about it, but there is certainly a war going on with the drug cartels on the water with the ships, which they are trying to combat, and that's proving really difficult.
I mean, it's just extraordinary, the inventiveness and creativity that goes into this. I watched a documentary recently about narco submarines that are made of carbon fibre in the South American rainforest, constructed out of the sight or with the tacit acceptance of authorities. And these submarines that are literally made by drug cartels then sail from South America up to Europe and dump their cargo, which is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of drugs, on beaches in Europe. I mean, just the most staggering level of creativity. Shabnam, I suspect, because we're talking about the cow ship full of cocaine, that there will not be any more cow ships full of cocaine. It's almost like the police are always one step behind where the drug smugglers are.
Well, there will be cow ships coming through with drugs, because these criminals are very clever. They wouldn't put drugs on every single one of those ships. They might bring, let's say, for argument's sake, 10 ships come through, and 2 of those will contain drugs within them. So it's very difficult to almost like sift through all that absolutely vile pit, cows and so on. So I don't think it's something that will stop. I think they know that they're onto something here, that this is working very well. And if they're able to get those millions of pounds worth of drugs through, they will continue to do so until that sort of opportunity for them has been obliterated by the agencies, and then they'll find a new way through. And just touching on what you've just mentioned, when you talk about the submarines, it sounds like something out of a James Bond movie, doesn't it? You just think to yourself, well, I can't believe that actually happens, or an AI type movie. But that is actually the reality of how slick these people are. You and I would go and get educated, universities, at schools and so on. These criminals work together and they educate themselves, and they are what you call career criminals who use vulnerable people, that use the people that don't have a lot of money to do all their dirty work for them, and they're the ones that sit there making millions and millions of pounds.
Thank you very much, Shabnam Chowdhury. It is really terrifying how professional this operation is, how slick it is. As Shabnam said there, it's sort of acting as though they are the police, a mirror image of the police, these criminal networks.
Well, there's so much money in it. I mean, you show me the outcome, I'll show you the incentive. I mean, it's how markets work, illegal or legal.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
A shelter charity caring for and rehoming abandoned animals for 30 years. But now they've been forced to move due to a housing development.
But if you're in search of some holiday sun to get away from the cocaine and the cows, here is some of the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. If you're planning on escaping the rain this week, well, unfortunately, there's still some rain affecting the parts of the Mediterranean. High pressure, though, in the Canaries, bringing plenty of dry weather to Madeira, 17 degrees here. Plenty of dry weather also across Spain and Portugal, as well as southern areas of France. However, this wet weather is still moving into parts of Greece, bringing some showers to Santorini through the rest of this week. Looking elsewhere, it does look drier and warmer by the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, just have a look at Tom Stoppard.
Yeah, this is terribly sad. It is the end of a kind of literary era. 6 decades-long career that Sir Tom had. My parents hung out with him in the 60s and 70s. They have. My mum has a wonderful story. Gorgeous man, but also a real flirt in a lovely way, in a gentlemanly way. And Mum was telling me last night about a very gorgeous little pink suit that she was wearing that he appreciated, let us say, very much. And yeah, and what a lovely man who's died at the age of 88. But yeah, I mean, not only a playwright, but also a screenwriter. He wrote the screenplay for Shakespeare in Love, which is something that...
what he won the Oscar for?
Yes, he won a Golden Globe and an Academy Award, and so many other kind of literary accolades in his career. He was really proud of his Czech heritage, wasn't he? And found out lots and lots about his Jewish root, but also very British as well. I think he balanced that.
Basically, he became the master of the second language.
Yeah.
Because he didn't speak English until he came to Britain.
Around, I think he was age 9, so it's quite late to...
So he became an absolute master of English, which wasn't his native, his real language.
And people say, you know, what should you see? What should you read? Because I think you should read Tom Stoppard as well as seeing him on the stage. And there's Travesties and there's Jumpers and there's Arcadia. I would recommend Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, which is so clever. And what you're saying about language there and words, that was the genius, really, of Tom Stoppard. There's one quote I wanted to read you. Be happy. If you're not even happy, what's so good about surviving? And he's so good about life and about mortality and about the fact that life is going in one direction for all of us. Same direction. Time is the only measure. He's brilliant on that. And he's kind of very intellectual, but also really accessible.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10-2, and Holbrook Animal Rescue has spent 3 decades caring for abandoned animals. But now the shelter says its very future hangs in the balance.
Yes, GB News reporter Isabel Fakulak joins us now. Isabel, tell us the story.
Well, here at Holbrook Animal Rescue, they're being forced to relocate, and if they can't find a suitable alternative, they'll even be at risk of closing. And I've seen the amazing work that they've done here. Just earlier, we met a dog called Essie, who has just found her almost possible forever home literally in the time that we were here. She only came here a couple of days ago, so it's really great work that they do for all animals. Like this one here, this is Torn, he's just a puppy, and I'm also joined by Laura Santini, who runs the shelter. Tell us a bit about Torn here.
So this is just a little fellow that came in, no fault of his own. The people just couldn't cope with him. So he's lively, and he's a half shepherd, half Labrador. And he's a bundle of fun, aren't you? Needs loads of training. So he needs a really nice home with loads of exercise and loads of time to spend on him, really.
And what kind of impact would the possible relocation or even closure have on dogs like this one and all the other animals you have here?
Well, simply that we wouldn't be able to take them. So if the next one comes up like this and we've got nowhere to go, then we just can't take them, obviously. So what happens to them at that point, I don't know, because we don't just take beautiful pups like this. We take the old and the sick and the dogs that other people don't necessarily want to take. So I can't imagine what would happen to some of them. So I don't know. It's sad. It's just a sad situation.
And you've had quite a lot of support from the community here in trying to relocate. What's been there for you in terms of support?
They're absolutely incredible. They've sent 1,000 letters into the council to try and support us and help us and let everyone see the light that, you know, you do actually need animal sanctuaries around. You can't shut them all down. We're always getting phone calls saying how much people like what we do and hope we get our plan in appeal when it goes through and things like that. The public support's amazing, actually. It's amazing town, this. Wonderful people.
And what kind of impact would the closure or loss of this in Horsham be for the community? What impact would that have?
There's not many animal sanctuaries in Horsham, especially sanctuaries that take all animals, not just dogs, but might take the odd goat and sheep and horse and things like that. There's not many that takes everything. There's one or two, but everywhere is full anyway. Since COVID, all the sanctuaries are filled up with dogs that aren't necessarily that easy to rehome. And I think people have there's been more breeding as well. So I know. So there's just more dogs to cope with. Not enough of us, not enough centres, and with everyone being full, even if a puppy, beautiful puppy like this came up, was homeless, if you haven't got room, you haven't got room.
Well, you can see the amazing work that is done here, a shelter that needs rescuing.
Well, Isabel, thanks very much for bringing us that, and really delightful to see a happy dog on screen.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let's hope that animal rescue centre survives, because puppies like that need a home. Too sad.
Certainly do. Although, of course, it could survive in a different location. I mean, let's not block housing for it. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Lots more coming up on today's show, so don't go anywhere. But first, let's take a look at the weather.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following the washout that was Monday, today's a much drier and brighter day for most of us. Some decent sunny spells out there, albeit with a few heavy showers still knocking about, particularly towards the southwest. We've got low pressure sitting to the north and west of the UK, bringing spells of showers in from the Atlantic, and those showers will be prevalent across the south coast into southwest Wales, as well as some parts of western Scotland. But away from these showery areas, well, some decent blue skies and mostly dry through the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. And it's going to be blustery out there. It's going to feel cool, but at least it will be drier and brighter compared with how we've started the week. But the showers will be lively where they occur, and they'll contain hail and thunder in places, particularly around immediate coasts of the south and southwest. They'll make inroads further inland as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland mostly escaping them with clear spells. Northern England, eastern Scotland staying clear as well. Some patchy cloud over the Highlands and Grampians, but showers for Scotland mostly around western and northern coasts. Across England and Wales, though, as the sun goes down, we will see these showers move across, and they'll tend to pop up just about anywhere as the night wears on. But again, some clear spells here and there. North East England, eastern Scotland, seeing temperatures drop away, a touch of frost in some sheltered parts, and a few fog patches as well to wake up to on Wednesday morning. But Wednesday morning, actually, very similar to Tuesday morning. Plenty of bright weather out there. A brisk breeze, yes, around southern and western coast. That's actually going to increase as the day goes on, and further showers, particularly once more around southern and western coast. One or two moving across southern Scotland, but actually, once again, plenty of sunny spells out there.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British Giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device,
and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. Happy Advent. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Olivia Utley. Well, David Lammy has scrapped thousands of jury trials, saying defendants who will likely get a sentence of 3 years or less will no longer get a jury trial.
Relief for victims not having to wait for ages, years really, to see their perpetrator in court. But what's it mean for our fundamental rights as Brits enshrined in Magna Carta?
And yet another jail fail for the Justice Secretary, as it's revealed 12 further prisoners have been accidentally released in the past 3 weeks, with a manhunt still on for 2 of them.
And an investigation into the Hillsborough disaster has found 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame the fans in the aftermath.
My dad, unfortunately, had to lose his life before the police took any action.
Well, the daughter of a murdered dog walker hits out at the police, saying her father's death could have been prevented. 80-year-old Bim Coley was brutally killed by teenagers at his local park in Leicestershire.
And new figures reveal more than 1 million pensioners face spending Christmas alone this year, with some not seeing or speaking to anyone over the entire day.
I think there's something more than sentimental about jury trials. I think there's something reassuring about jury trials, knowing that it's not going to be some sort of part of the state infrastructure. If you're ever accused of anything, if you ever have to interact with the law, knowing that it will be your countrymen who decide your fate it's almost a safety mechanism in those massive machinations of state infrastructure.
Exactly, and there's actually statistics to back that up. We've talked about how magistrates are more likely to convict than a jury, but there's also statistics showing that, for example, judges are more likely to convict if it's nearly lunchtime. If they're feeling a bit hungry and grumpy,
really?
They're more likely to convict. So I think if I were on trial, of course, we must be talking about the victims, and David Lammy was right to point out that the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, failed to mention the victims, but we also need to consider those people who are on trial, who are, of course, innocent until proven guilty. And if I were one of them, I would definitely want to be tried by a jury. It seems much safer.
If I dared to tweet at something intemperate in this country with its speech climate, I would absolutely want a jury to assess whether I'd gone beyond this country's restrictive speech codes, or if I hadn't. I mean, the case that I referenced earlier is the most clear light and day example of this, where Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty, so did not get a jury trial, and ended up in prison for almost 2 years, whereas there was a bloke who said something similar at a similar time, but pleaded innocent, demanded his right to a jury trial, and the jury let him off any prison time because they didn't think that it was acceptable to send someone to prison for such a long time for an intemperate tweet.
And of course, there's always the risk that however unbiased judges try to be, their political biases may creep in. Well, please do let us know what you think on this and everything else that we've been talking about. Send your views and comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say.
Well, of course, you can also scan that QR code on your screens that's been up throughout this whole conversation. But let's get to your latest news headlines now.
Very good afternoon to you. 4 minutes past 2. Well, the Justice Secretary has confirmed a major overhaul of jury trials today, saying some cases carrying sentences of 3 years or less will now be decided by a judge alone, not a jury. David Lammy says the changes, along with expanding magistrates' sentencing powers to 18 months, will speed up cases and help tackle the record Crown Court backlog. But the Conservatives, well, they are attacking the plan. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick says scrapping jury trials is dangerous.
If the Justice Secretary gets away with this, it's the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing.
Earlier in the Commons, David Lammy pushed back. He insists juries remain fundamental, but says too many defendants are playing the system and that victims deserve faster justice.
In his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog.
The Justice Secretary has also today revealed a dozen prisoners have been mistakenly released in just the past month and 2 are still on the run. David Lammy says the pair at large are not violent or sexual offenders but won't give further details. It comes after a series of blunders across the prison estate, including the wrongful release of convicted sex offender Brahim Kadur Sharif and the case of Hadushka Batu, whose mistaken release sparked protests in Essex. Mr Lammy says stronger security checks are now in place, calling the early signs a downward trend, but admits there remains, in his words, a mountain to climb to fix the system. A damning new report has said there's a critical failure to answer even the most basic questions about sexual crimes against women, including how many are raped by strangers each year. The latest Angeloni inquiry, set up after the murder of Sarah Everard, warns that police forces are gathering patchy, inconsistent and incomplete data, leaving dangerous offenders slipping through the cracks. Lady Eilish Angeloni says the system must change instead and called for urgent national action, even the use of AI tools to help identify predatory men. The Home Secretary says the findings are utterly unacceptable and the government will consider the recommendations. A stark warning from the OECD today, which says tax hikes and spending cuts will drag on the UK economy for the next 2 years, slowing growth and keeping inflation among the highest in the G7. The report says fiscal tightening is acting as a headwind, with household incomes also squeezed. Growth is now expected to fall to just 1.2% next year and inflation to stay stubbornly high. It comes as pressures mounting on the Chancellor after last week's £26 billion tax-raising budget, though she insists her choices will help bring prices down and stabilise the economy. In Ukraine, a British man's been detained on suspicion of spying for Russia, according to the security service there. Investigators say the suspect, a former member of the UK armed forces who travelled to Ukraine last year, was later recruited by Russia's FSB, allegedly tempted by easy money. He's accused of passing Ukrainian military coordinates to Moscow and even preparing terrorist acts, including receiving instructions to build an IED. He was arrested in October and is now being held on suspicion of passing unauthorised information to Russia, charges that could carry up to 12 years in prison if convicted. And new immigration laws set to be received by the Royal Assent this week will hand immigration enforcement officers unprecedented powers to target people smuggling gangs. For the first time, officers will be able to order illegal migrants to remove their coats, jackets or gloves at UK ports, to search for phones and even inspect inside someone's mouth for hidden SIM cards or micro devices. The Home Office says the aim is to seize crucial early-stage intelligence, including messages between smugglers and migrants, to help disrupt the criminal networks driving channel crossings. Those are your latest headlines. I'll hand you straight back now to Tom and Olivia.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 8 minutes past 2, and the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, has laid out plans to curb the right for a jury trial as part of efforts to tackle the court's emergency, his words, and reduce the backlog. In the last hour, the Justice Secretary announced the move to the House of Commons.
First, I will create new swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either-way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials.
But these proposals are a change of heart for the Justice Secretary, who tweeted 5 years ago, jury trials are a fundamental part of our democratic settlement. Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea.
Well, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, couldn't help reminding David Lammy about his past statement.
He found juries, and I quote, act as a filter for prejudice. But now he's become Justice Secretary, he's scrapping the very institution he once lauded. Which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up?
So will this move help to fix our justice system? Let's get the thoughts of our political editor, Christopher Hope. Now, Christopher, obviously we've all known that there has been a huge backlog in the courts ever since the pandemic and before that, really. Was this a necessary move from David Lammy to try and crack into that backlog, a brave move from the Justice Secretary, or is it a fundamental infringement on our human rights?
Well, Liv, I think something had to be done. I mean, yes, he did say that, didn't he, back in 2010, but that was before the backlog doubled from 40,000 to 80,000, now scheduled to hit 100,000 by 2028. I mean, looking at a statement just released by Sir Brian Leveson, he, of course, is formerly ran the Leveson Inquiry into Journalism Ethics. He's now chair of the Independent Review of Criminal Courts. He says this: he's never seen pressure on the courts at such an unacceptable level. He says it's no exaggeration to say that the system stands on the brink of collapse. That's a judge so familiar with the system. It's not a political point he's making, an actual point. Something had to be done. You've got victims waiting 3 or 4 years to see their perpetrators in court. That's a long time for a victim to have to wait to give evidence. No wonder many of them drop out and say, I can't do it, and that allows the perpetrator to get off scot-free. I think it did have to be done. These new ideas from David Lammy to create what they called swift courts, that they'll review any with a single judge any instance of a crime subject to less than 3 years in prison. They'll look at it. Magistrates' courts looking at cases up to 18 months, not just 1 year now. That means fewer cases going to Crown Court. There aren't that many. Only 10% of all cases go to Crown Court. Of those, 7% people plead guilty, so only 3%. It's a tiny number, but I think Robert Jenrick's right. There is an issue here. I think it's Article 9 of Magna Carta in 2015 guarantees us all to a right to a jury trial. They're going to eat into that to bring down this backlog. That is probably right, but I think what will have to happen when this comes law is almost certainly a sunset clause will be imposed. That is not what the government's saying at the moment, but when this backlog is cleared, and the government can't even say it will be falling by the next election, when it's cleared, can be surely no justification in keeping that right to a jury trial suspended. Many people think back to the last Labour government under Tony Blair. Big issues there with civil liberty. Surprisingly, you might think, but they tried to bring in 90-day detention. It got cut out of 28-day detention by the campaigning of David Davis, a Tory MP, and others, a cross-party group attacking that. So there are concerns about eating away at our basic civil liberties. So I can see how this will get through the House of Commons and Lords, but I imagine the plans must need to be sunsetted. So by a certain date, they fall away and we go back to where we were since 2015, 12-15.
How a how a campaign could be launched against this that doesn't undo the fundamentals of what David Lammy is trying to do, but does sunset them in some sort of way. If, of course, this is only about getting rid of the backlog, why then would this need to last after the backlog has been eliminated? I mean, the House of Lords has been relatively successful in getting the government to go back on its workers' rights day one idea that have been so damaging for companies not being able to take risks on hiring people and all the rest of it. It is possible to see a successful campaign being brought here despite the government's enormous majority in the Commons.
Without question, this to me is a classic case where the House of Lords will move on this, because these measures are not in the manifesto. They were not.
Chris, sorry, we're going to have to stop you there. Hopefully we can come back to this later, but we're going to have to cross to Liverpool, where bereaved family members of the Hillsborough disaster are attending a press conference.
6 years after the disaster, 36 years since the Taylor inquiry correctly concluded that the cause of the disaster was the failure of police control. 13 years since the Hillsborough Independent Panel exposed the police cover-up by altering statements. 13 years since the IOPC started its work. 9 years since the fresh inquest concluded the victims had been unlawfully killed and the fans were exonerated. The evidence that has allowed the IOPC to draw its conclusions has been there all that time. No doubt the IOPC will point to the amount of material it has had to consider, but during this delay in finally reaching these conclusions, 2 of our clients died while waiting for the fresh inquests. They never got to see the unlawful killing verdict. Since that verdict, we have lost more clients. Dave Church, whose son Gary was unlawfully killed. Joan Tootle, whose son Peter was unlawfully killed. Teresa Glover, whose son Ian was unlawfully killed. Ed Rimmer, whose son Carl was unlawfully killed. And just a few months ago, Barry Devonside, whose son Christopher was unlawfully killed. There are sadly many others. They have all been denied the opportunity to hear these findings. They deserve better. We are pleased to see that the IOPC has endorsed our call for Hillsborough law, a law which, if it had been in place, would have saved all the Hillsborough families and survivors years of anguish, not to mention taxpayer money. We now call on the government to fully uphold its promise that Hillsborough law will extend to IOPC investigations without any caveats. Thank you. I will now pass over to Charlotte. After Charlotte, we will open up for questions. If you could please state the name of the person who your question is directed to, that would assist us. Thank you.
We would like to start by acknowledging the innocent victims, our loved ones, who were unlawfully killed at Hillsborough in 1989 due to the gross negligence manslaughter of multiple senior South Yorkshire police officers, and acknowledge the bravery of Liverpool supporters who, despite their own injury and trauma, assisted to save lives, have stood on their truth, have assisted families in all investigations, inquiries, inquests and reports at every opportunity. They were wrongfully blamed by the people who should have protected them, who should have kept them safe and assisted them in their time of need. We commend your bravery and we will never be able to thank you enough. We would like to thank the IOPC for their detailed and comprehensive support. As predicted, it confirms what families and survivors knew all along. David Duckenfield is a liar. His first thought, whilst he stood over Liverpool fans, watching them fight for their lives, was to blame them and protect himself. Despite multiple opportunities over the course of 25 years, up until he gave evidence at the fresh inquests, he chose to remain silent and watch as we fought for justice, truth and accountability. We made it clear following the inquest, and we reiterate again today, that we do not accept his apology. We welcome the conclusion in relation to the 12 senior officers and 1 police constable that their actions or lack of them amounts to a case to answer for gross misconduct. While some conclusions are disappointing, we respect the process was investigated and accept the element of closure. Many remind us that Hillsborough was 36 years ago, but nobody is more acutely aware of that than those who lost loved ones and those who survived. For all these years, we have longed for full disclosure, and we thought that we'd got that when the Hillsborough Independent Panel released their report. So I'm sure you can imagine the utter disgust that despite fresh inquests and appeals by Operation Resolve, Assistant Chief Constable Jones did not hand over all of his personal policing documents, and only did so when he learnt of this investigation. We were also shocked to learn that the IOPC discovered over 130 more South Yorkshire statements that in fact had been amended, bringing that total to over 300. From missing documents and videotapes to highly respected, high-ranking, experienced officers who could not recall, we will never truly know the full extent of South Yorkshire Police Force's deception, but there is no hiding, there is no destroying, and there is no way to cover up that they failed their duties and then they sought to blame the victims. We also want to acknowledge that the statement was made by South Yorkshire Police Federation this morning, who rather than acknowledge their failings that were exposed right from the Taylor report, they have chosen to double down and highlight that some of their officers are now very elderly. Well, our loved ones didn't get to live to have that privilege. We refute their contention that they have not had the right to reply. Our understanding is that anyone named in the report would...
Well, there we've been listening to bereaved family members of the Hillsborough disaster. Of course, we'll be returning to this topic later on throughout the channel.
But we're joined now by former Lord Chancellor and Conservative MP Sir Robert Buckland to discuss those radical proposals laid out by David Lammy in the House of Commons this morning. Obviously, there is a huge backlog predicted to get up to 100,000 by 2029, 2030. Some of that happened under the Conservative government. David Lammy had to do something radical, didn't he? Wasn't this his only option?
No, it wasn't. And I think this is more about saving money than it is actually dealing with the backlog, which is why, attractive though Chris Hope's thinking was about a sunset clause, I'm not sure that once you do this, we'd ever go back. These sort of changes tend to be irreversible. You know, I looked at the jury issue and when we were in the middle of the COVID crisis. You know, in the Second World War, we reduced the number of jurors from 12 to 7 to cope with the wartime crisis. In times of national emergency, you do have to look at options, but I wasn't persuaded and wasn't convinced that actually it was juries that are the problem here. The problem is the plethora of digital evidence that now exists in every single case that just wasn't there 10 or even 15 years ago. Now, Sir Brian Leveson is doing a lot of ongoing work as to how technologically the courts can be better equipped to deal with all of this. And it would have seemed to me to be wiser for David Lammy to wait for that important part of Sir Brian's review and then actually provide a more technological solution to these problems. I think cutting juries just misses the point. Doesn't deal with existing cases. You can't make it retrospective. That would be unfair. And ultimately, it's, I'm afraid, cocking a snook at a system that commands widespread public confidence. If you start giving case-hardened judges the task of making these decisions, I'm worried that trust will erode. And I think that this is a hasty measure, and it's a measure that has not been thought through.
It's interesting you mentioned the other sort of paths available to the Justice Secretary. I mean, digital evidence is obviously a huge issue when it comes to all of these different cases. I mean, how on earth would you be able to expedite the dealing with digital evidence? I mean, what could that look like?
Well, look, I think in various respects, we could use not just, AI is a term that we bandy about quite a lot, but assistive technology to deal with the administrative tasks that at the moment overwhelm a lot of Crown Court centres. All those orders that have to be complied with, case management, really important to get right so that cases are truly ready for trial. But then secondly, in the process before it gets to trial, the sifting through the evidence, the disclosure of evidence, the marshalling of all the material that exists in cases, we really need to get a move on and improve the way in which that is done in an automated fashion, in an ethical fashion, of course, but with the assistance, I think, of technology that we know is already available to us. The MOJ is looking at this. They've appointed a head of AI who's actually a suitably qualified expert. And I'm surprised that David Lammy has decided to go down this road rather than actually really take this opportunity to do something transformational to the technological lag that still exists in the criminal justice system.
Well, thank you very much, Sir Robert Buckland. It's really interesting, isn't it, Tom, to hear about some other solutions that David Lammy could have possibly put forward. We all know that the system is in crisis, but perhaps this wasn't the only option.
And that this would only be about cases adding to the backlog, because those that are already in the backlog would be unaffected. So it doesn't quite
make it quite adds up.
Well, goodness me. Interested to see your thoughts on that, of course. And friends of GB News can vote in today's You Decide poll by scanning the QR code on the screen now, just over there. We're asking, do you have confidence in our justice system?
So far, 2% of you say yes and 98% of you say no. Pretty damning indictment there from GB News viewers. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, new figures reveal that more than 1 million pensioners face spending Christmas alone this year, with some not speaking to anyone over the entire day. But after the break,
an investigation into the Hillsborough disaster has found 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame fans in the aftermath.
Well, all of that and indeed more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 2. Now, an investigation into the Hillsborough disaster by the Independent Office for Police Conduct has found South Yorkshire police were guilty of deep complacency, fundamental failure and a concerted effort to blame fans during and after the Hillsborough disaster, according to a report from the police watchdog.
Our national reporter, Will Godley, has been following the story and he has the latest for us now. Will, tell us a bit more about what's in that report.
Yeah, well, lots to get into there. It's a 366-page long report. It's taken the IOPC some 13 years to look at all of the evidence and come to their conclusions here, outlining this deep complacency at South Yorkshire Police in their preparation to police the football match, their ability to police it and also their response after the incident took place, but also fundamental failures and their concerted efforts to shift blame from their failures onto the fans who were there in that Liverpool side. And that is particularly something that the bereaved families have been reacting to this afternoon, rather emotionally, giving a press conference in Liverpool, reacting to these findings, of course, that have named that 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings had they still been serving police officers today. And those officers go right to the top of South Yorkshire Police when they were serving there at the time, including the then Chief Constable Peter Wright, who the report said attempted to promote a false narrative to shift blame away from his officers and the police force that he was in charge of. It's also named David Duckenfield, the guy responsible for policing the Hillsborough incident there, and he was cleared of gross negligence manslaughter back in 2019. But this report says that he froze in crisis and said he would have, if he was still an officer today, 10 gross misconduct allegations to answer for peddling those lies, that it was the Liverpool fans responsible for this crush rather than failed efforts amongst the policing of this incident. And reacting to this report, one of the members of the bereaved families, Charlotte Hennessy, whose father died in Hillsborough, said rather emotionally at this press conference, David Duckenfield is a liar. When he saw Liverpool fans dying, his first thought was to blame them and protect himself. She went on to say, we do not accept his apology. Well, a third person also named in this IOPC report today, one of these 12 officers who would have faced gross misconduct proceedings is Sir Norman Bettison. He went on to become the Chief Constable of Merseyside Police, of course, overseeing Liverpool, where lots of these bereaved families are living. And he is facing allegations that he was deliberately dishonest when applying for that job over his role at the Hillsborough disaster. And reacting to that news today, that he was involved in this stuff and was accused of being deliberately dishonest, families now calling for him to have his knighthood stripped and also his policing medals stripped. And MPs are going to be tabling a motion in Parliament to discuss whether he should have those knighthoods stripped of him. And reacting to the news as well, the family's very pleased that the IOPC are supporting their Hillsborough law. That's part of this report out today, which has said that had the Hillsborough law been in place at the time, this law that requires police officers to act with candour, then perhaps this report wouldn't even have been needed. The Deputy Director, speaking this afternoon of the IOPC, Cathy Cashel, said, I'm certain that if we had had today's professional standards in place and a legal duty of candour, we would have had more outcomes to report today. Those outcomes, she said, may have been misconduct proceedings or criminal charges for those officers involved in the in the Hillsborough disaster. Of course, this report said there was no orchestrated cover-up, but of course 92 misconduct complaints that have been upheld or found cases to answer about the police's actions on what is still the biggest sporting disaster in Britain's history, some 36 years ago.
Thank you very much to Will Godley for that update there. Now, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, new figures reveal that more than 1 million pensioners face spending Christmas alone this year, with some not seeing or speaking to anyone over the entire day. Well, all of that and much more to come after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. 2:30. Well, a major overhaul of jury trials today as the Justice Secretary's confirmed some cases carrying sentences of 3 years or less will now be decided by a judge alone. David Lammy says the changes will help tackle the record Crown Court backlog. The Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said scrapping jury trials is dangerous.
If the Justice Secretary gets away with this, it's the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing.
But David Lammy says victims deserve faster justice.
In his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog.
A long-awaited report says 12 ex-police officers would have faced gross misconduct charges over the Hillsborough disaster, but none can be disciplined because they'd already retired. The police watchdog found fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame fans, leaving families with what lawyers call another bitter injustice. New laws this week will give immigration enforcement sweeping new powers, including searching phones, coats and even inside mouths for hidden SIM cards. It's all aimed at tracking down people smuggling gangs behind the Channel crossings. And UK airports are bracing for the busiest Christmas getaway ever. More than 22 million passengers expected this month alone, with Heathrow handling over 7 million travellers. Those are the headlines for now. More news with Tatiana Sanchez at 3.
Thanks, Sam. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway, a brand new one now. Your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date.
Yes, an incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours in the new year. It's like having an extra £7,000 in your bank account each month for the whole of 2026. You really could be our biggest cash winner. Here's all the details you'll need.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British Giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Now there's lots more coming up on today's programme.
You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following the washout that was Monday, today's a much drier and brighter day for most of us. Some decent sunny spells out there, albeit with a few heavy showers still knocking about, particularly towards the southwest. We've got low pressure sitting to the north and west of the UK, bringing spells of showers in from the Atlantic, and those showers will be prevalent across the south coast into southwest Wales, as well as some parts of western Scotland. But away from these showery areas, well, some decent blue skies and mostly dry through the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. And it's going to be blustery out there. It's going to feel cool, but at least it will be drier and brighter compared with how we've started the week. But the showers will be lively where they occur, and they'll contain hail and thunder in places, particularly around immediate coasts of the south and southwest. They'll make inroads further inland as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland mostly escaping them with clear spells. Northern England, eastern Scotland staying clear as well. Some patchy cloud over the Highlands and Grampians, but showers for Scotland mostly around western and northern coasts. Across England and Wales, though, as the sun goes down, we will see these showers move across, and they'll tend to pop up just about anywhere as the night wears on. But again, some clear spells here and there. North East England, eastern Scotland, seeing temperatures drop away, a touch of frost in some sheltered parts, and a few fog patches as well to wake up to on Wednesday morning. But Wednesday morning, actually, very similar to Tuesday morning. Plenty of bright weather out there. A brisk breeze, yes, around southern and western coast. That's actually going to increase as the day goes on, and further showers, particularly once more around southern and western coasts. One or two moving across southern Scotland, but actually, once again, plenty of sunny spells out there.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 8 million followers across social media. Thank you for making us a part of your daily life.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There's a restriction on the A9 southbound at Balhaldy due to a broken down vehicle, so drivers should be cautious. In Cheshire East, the M6 southbound at junction 19 has lane closures following a traffic collision, with delays anticipated until 3:15 today. In Staffordshire, one lane is closed southbound on the M6 between junctions 13 and 12, resolving by 4 this afternoon. In Rutland, there are 20-minute delays on the A1 northbound between the A606 and the A151. And on the trains, Greater Anglia and the Stansted Express face major disruptions between Tottenham Hale and Cheshunt. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
And welcome back. Some breaking news. It has just been revealed that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is unlikely to receive any compensation for giving up his Royal Lodge home because of the repairs that will be needed to the 30-room mansion.
Well, let's get all the details now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, there's news just breaking now.
Yes, let's try and rewind back slightly for our viewers and listeners here. If you remember the big scandal with Prince Andrew, and of course he's been forced to leave Royal Lodge because, of course, one of the reasons is that newspapers revealed that he was paying, and I quote, peppercorn rents to live in this 30-room mansion, which effectively is owned by the British taxpayer via the Crown estate. And people, of course, are questioning, as a non-working member of the royal family anymore, whether that was fair. So the Public Accounts Committee, a group of MPs responsible for kind of holding public finances to account, wrote to the Crown Estate asking them to justify what's kind of going on here. And that response from a Crown Estate to the Public Accounts Committee has been published in the last few minutes. Now, they haven't gone into great detail as to the justification as to why he was allowed to pay peppercorn rent at this stage. But what they have confirmed, as you said in your link there, is that because Andrew has terminated the lease early, there was a question mark whether he would be entitled to £488,342.21 for ending that tenancy agreement early, which he gave notice on the 30th of October this year. They say, in all likelihood, because of the repairs required, he does move out, he will not be entitled to compensation. In other words, money from the Crown Estate, indirectly, to some extent, taxpayers' money, will not be funding Prince Andrew in any kind of compensation. So in that regard, I would say, I think a majority of the public would say that's pretty good news. He's just going to be moving out by the absolute latest, 30th of October 2026, although I understand he's going to be moving out much, much earlier than that to live on the Sandringham estate, but that's the official legal date. But the Crown Estates have gone a lot further, which is something that has surprised me. They've not stopped at Prince Andrew Andrew's rental agreements with Royal Lodge. Easily done. They've gone on to talk about the Prince and Princess of Wales's arrangements with Forest Lodge, the house they have just moved into as of July, as well as Prince Edward living in Bagshot Park. That has also come under scrutiny in the last few weeks because the Times reports that he is also paying peppercorn rent. Of course, completely different because he is a working member of the royal family. But it does confirm that the Prince and Princess of Wales asked to rent out Forest Lodge, their new home. The Crown Estate carried out the same checks and processes that they would use for any kind of high-value property. There were independent valuers setting the rent. Lawyers reviewed the terms, and a standard 20-year lease was granted to the Prince and Princess of Wales, fully compliant with all laws, and there were no special financial treatments because they are members of the royal family. In other words, we understand that the Prince and Princess of Wales are paying market value rent, so not peppercorn rent like Andrew appears to have got away with.
How do they have money? I mean, obviously they're the royals, right? But
how do they have money?
But I mean, do they have income? I mean, if you're a working member of the royal family, do you get an annual salary from the Crown Estate or something?
Well, Prince William does. He is also the Duke of Cornwall, Tom. So he owns the Duchy of Cornwall, which gives him an annual allowance roughly of over £20 million a year. So I'm sure he can afford
he can afford it. I'm suddenly a lot less worried.
Don't worry, he is not going to be homeless. Although he does champion, of course, trying to make British people not homeless, just for a little bit. Yes, I will dig more. There's a very long document. I'm still digging through it, and our team out there is still digging through it. If there's any more bombshells and I need to tell you back, I'll run straight back in here and tell you.
What sort of life can Prince Andrew expect to lead without that money? So he's going to be housed somewhere on the Sandringham estate. What's he going to live off?
Well, his brother's money, the King's money, Duchy of Lancaster money, and his own private income. He's got a small, modest military pension because, of course, he was in the Royal Navy in the 1980s, fought in the Falklands War. So perhaps that can be his spending money. But in terms of the house he's living in on the Sandringham estate, that is privately funded by the King. No taxpayers' money is going to be used to fund Prince Andrew's lifestyle from now on.
Well, thank you very much, Cameron Walker, and hope to hear more from you as you dig through that document.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's plenty more coming up on today's programme.
New figures reveal more than 1 million pensioners face spending Christmas alone this year, with some not seeing or speaking to anyone over the entire day.
But of course, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine with or without anyone else, here is the forecast for those top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. If you're planning on escaping the rain this week, well, unfortunately, there's still some rain affecting the parts of the Mediterranean. High pressure, though, in the Canaries, bringing plenty of dry weather to Madeira, 17 degrees here. Plenty of dry weather also across Spain and Portugal, as well as southern areas of France. However, this wet weather is still moving into parts of Greece, bringing some showers to Santorini through the rest of this week. Looking elsewhere, it does look drier and warmer by the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 10 to 3. Now, more than 1 million older people could be spending Christmas without a single conversation, according to new figures from Age UK.
Yes, the charity says silence will replace celebration for far too many this year. Well, joining us now to tell us more is the head of loneliness service at Age UK, Ruth Lowe. Ruth, I mean, this is an absolute calamity, isn't it? Because we know that loneliness has a huge effect on the physical and mental health of older people. It can even have an impact on longevity. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the impacts of loneliness on an individual can be absolutely huge. So although it's not a mental health condition, it is closely linked with anxiety, cognitive decline and dementia. And it also has a big impact on our physical health. So it can make it so much harder to look after ourselves and manage a health condition. And it's associated with a wide range of physical health conditions as well. And the problem can be that when someone starts to experience loneliness, it impacts their health. And then those health conditions can make it so much harder to go out and about and form connections. So people can almost become trapped in this chronic cycle of loneliness where because they're lonely, their health deteriorates and it becomes even harder then to reduce that loneliness. So that's why it's so important that Age UK is here for older people. And we've just launched our winter campaign, A Crisis Hiding in Plain Sight, where we are asking the public to support us to provide our vital services for older people experiencing loneliness.
And what do those services include? How do you help those older people who might be facing Christmas alone this year?
So we have a wide range of services. We've got some national services like our Silverline helpline, which is open 24 hours a day for any older person that needs to chat, and we'll be having older people call that service on Christmas Day. And for some of them, that will be the only person they speak to. And it's amazing to hear those calls. You know, you can hear somebody come on the line feeling quite down, speaking negatively about themselves. And as the call progresses, you can hear the joy and the light come back into their life just from having a simple conversation with someone. We've also got a telephone friendship service where we match older people with volunteers to have a regular friendly chat, and we have some amazing friendships form on that service. And we also offer a wide range of services in communities through our local partners, so they offer lots of things over the festive season and all year round, like social groups, dance classes, lunch clubs. So we're here every day of the year offering services to older people. So I would encourage any older person who is feeling a little bit lonely, please do get in touch. We've got lots of things available to help you, and we also have a great free guide on loneliness that we can post out to you, which has got lots of helpful tips that was written with older people who've experienced loneliness themselves. You're certainly not alone and there is help out there for you.
Oh, that's a really lovely message. Why is it, do you think, that loneliness is so much on the rise in Britain? Is it family ties sort of breaking apart, people moving to other parts of the country? What's going on?
I mean, it's been a really difficult few years for older people with the COVID lockdowns, and now the cost of living crisis is having a really big impact on a lot of older people. So, you know, we speak to older people who are having to make difficult choices between heating and eating, so they certainly haven't got money to go out and do things that they enjoy. There's also a lot of external factors in our communities like poor provision of public transport, and even public toilets can make it harder for older people to get out and about. And digital exclusion is also a huge issue for older people, with more and more services moving online. online. So many of us interact online, and a lot of older people are just completely excluded from that. So at Age UK, we are working to change how we age, and our vision is a world where older people always have someone to turn to. But it is something that is particularly challenging over winter and over the festive period when, you know, we're bombarded with images of people being together with their family and friends. But the reality is that 1.5 million older people will be eating their Christmas dinner alone this year.
And that's the great irony, that it's a loneliness epidemic that involves so many people. All it takes is, I suppose, connecting some of those people and you start to solve the problem. But Ruth Lowe, thanks indeed for joining us, Head of Loneliness Service there at Age UK.
Well, thanks for watching. Good afternoon, Britain. Don't go anywhere because Martin is up next.
Absolutely, all of that to come with so many stories still to cover here on the channel, so you'll want to catch Martin. He's up after your latest weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We've seen scattered showers across the south and the west today, and they'll make a little bit further northeastern progress over the next few hours, interspersed by clear spells, and it remains breezy with low pressure sitting to the northwest of the country and this southwesterly airflow. That's what's pushing the showers from the south into the Midlands, parts of eastern England, as well as much of northern England and Scotland through the evening. After around midnight, I think the showers will once again become restricted to southern and western coasts. Clear spells developing inland, still some patchy cloud, but where we do get those clear spells, temperatures will fall away. It won't be freezing first thing. Temperatures typically around 3 to 5 Celsius, but in one or two sheltered spots across eastern Scotland and northeast England, we will see a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches around first thing across the Midlands, southeast England, for example. Still some showers along the south coast, but more especially into Wales, western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, and western and northwest Scotland. In fact, some more persistent rain, I suspect, through northwest Scotland during the morning. A stark contrast to the sunny skies that we'll see across eastern Scotland and elsewhere through central and eastern England. So mixed bag for Wednesday, still some showers around, and this time the focus for showers will be across Scotland, northern England, West Wales. A few showers into the south, but not as many as Tuesday. And in between, well, certainly